present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Jacqueline Mackenzie in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute, and what a delightful-looking audience you appear to be. Well, once again, we are all in the Playhouse Theatre, and we have the three famous exponents of the game, and we welcome to the programme for the first time on the distaff side to challenge these three keen men, Jacqueline Mackenzie. And the rules are still the same. I'm going to ask each one to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviation. In other words, without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they manage to do it, they will gain points or perhaps give them away. And let us begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, the subject that's been chosen for you is my cooker. Can you talk about my cooker for 60 seconds, starting now?
My cooker is a woman, and her names are Patricia, Sybil, and Nimmo, and she happens to be my wife. And every morning...
Kenneth Williams, you've challenged right away.
He's not discussing a cooker, he's discussing a person.
Well, he is discussing a person.
Well, a
Why
person
challenge
can't
him?
be a cooker. A person will be a cook. So there you are, you see.
This is a very...
Well, if you walk, you're a walker.
You don't say to her, here, you're a cooker. You say to her, you're a good cook, you are.
My children say you're a good cooker to me.
Right away, I'm not going to be the judge of this because it immediately puts me in the
You
position...
coward, you.
No,
Get me out of it.
I happen to know Derek's wife. She's a very charming person, and I don't know whether she should be called a cooker or not.
She's just been converted.
She's just been what?
Converted.
To what? Oh.
Natural gas.
Well, we've got off to a rip-roaring start. They've all got a jolly good joke. I'm now going to ask the audience to join in right at the very beginning of the show. And if you agree with Kenneth Williams' challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree with his challenge, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? They don't think that Derek should call his wife a cooker. Is that clearly understood, Derek? So, Kenneth, you gain the subject. You gain a point because that's the correct challenge. And there are 52 seconds left for my cooker, starting now.
My cooker is white and very beautiful in a clinical way. I often like just to sit looking at the chromium gleaming against this white background and the little...
Clement Freud is challenged.
What's it challenged?
Clement Freud is challenged. The man...
No.
And repetition of the word white.
I agree, there was repetition of the word white. So, Clement, you gain a point and you take over the subject. And there are 39 seconds left for my cooker, starting now.
My cooker uses gas and has 5 points, also a grill, and beneath that, an oven. Many people enjoy coming to my house because of the excellence.
Derek Nimmo, you challenge. Why?
Deviation, I don't enjoy going to his house.
That is rude.
I said many people.
Can you give someone a bonus point for rudeness? All right, Derek, you made your point. You've got a jolly good laugh. I won't charge any points because it isn't at all fair. And nobody's gained anything on that. And there are 27 seconds left. Clement Freud, for you can continue with my cooker, starting now.
Extracting an oven dish from...
Oh, Derek, why have you challenged again?
Repetition of oven.
No, there's an
Oh,
oven.
that's
you
right,
have
there
an
was an
oven.
oven.
Oh,
before.
yes,
Yes,
that is
yes.
true.
Oven dish.
Yes, Derek, you gain a point.
My oven dish is not a cooker.
No,
You have
repetition of
used the
oven.
word oven before, so that is repetition.
There was oven beneath the 5 points.
Anyway, Derek, you gain a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 24 seconds left. My cooker, starting now.
My cooker is electric, and I keep it downstairs in a little room where it lives all by itself. And it is painted pale green to go with the walls, which are a similar color. It particularly likes me putting pea soup on top of it in a little pan, and I stir it with a silver spoon, which used to be in my mouth.
Clement Freud, you have challenged.
Repetition of little cooker, little room, little pan.
Yeah, it's a bit unfair, don't you think?
Oh, very unfair.
No, it's rather not.
Very unfair.
But it's absolutely accurate, so I have to give Clement Freud a point. And there are 4 seconds left for my cooker, Clement, starting now.
Frying pans go particularly...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of pans.
All right, he was tough with you. I'll be tough with him. So, right, Derek, you have another point. And there are 2 seconds left for my
Silk
cooker.
pans.
Did you say pans before? He did say pans before.
I thought he said pans when he was putting them in his oven.
Well, it probably wasn't that kind of a pan. I think you better let him have it.
Who do you think I should let have what, Kenneth?
Well, let him have the benefit of the doubt, honey.
Who?
Derek.
All right, Derek, got the benefit of the doubt. Clement said, Kenneth was an absolute impartial observer. So there are 2 seconds left, Derek, for my cooker starting now.
The North Thames Gas Board are very...
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes, which tells us that 60 seconds is up, gets an extra point. In this particular occasion, it was Derek Nimmer who very cleverly got in, so he now has a lead over everybody else at the end of that round. Kenneth, will you begin the next round for us? The subject for you, knowing your knowledge of history, I'm sure Ian Methodist chose it especially, Robespierre. Can you talk to us about Robespierre for 60 seconds, starting now?
He came to the fore apropos of the.
Jacqueline Mackenzie has
Oh, it's a
challenged you.
disgrace.
It's a hesitation,
It was
surely.
a definite hesitation.
Wait till your
yes.
turn comes.
I wish it didn't on this
Oh,
one.
there we are. So, there we are. Robespierre completely floored him. And Jacqueline is a correct hesitation, a correct challenge. Jacqueline, so you gain a point. You take over the subject. There are 55 seconds left, starting now.
Robespierre was a revolting Frenchman and started the terror, as far as I know. He became a supreme being as starting the terror. He murdered...
Derek Nimmer has challenged you.
over terrorists.
Yes.
I was
Two
terrified.
Yes, of course you were. But I'm afraid you said terror twice. So Derek's challenge, being correct, he gains another point. And there are 43 seconds left for Robespierre. Derek, starting now.
I stand there in my robes, peering round the corner towards the lovely statue in Madame Tussauds.
Kenneth Williams has challenged you. Why?
Because Robespierring is not Robespierre. I mean, it's a disgrace.
Well-
Deviation, Ducky. You can't get me.
You can't intimidate me. You can't get me around there. He had very...
Robespierring round, I'll come.
I am going to justify Robespierre is the title on the card. And Derek has very cleverly taken that word and said Robespierre ring, and he put an ing on it. And this is perfectly legitimate within the rules of the game. So he gets another point. There are 39 seconds left for Robespierre, Derek, starting now.
Towards the wax model of Robespierre in Madame Tussauds. This is very interesting because the first Madame Tussauds was...
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
Repetition of Madame Tussauds.
That's right, it's perfectly correct, Clement. You gain a point, and there are 32 seconds left for Robespierre, Clement, starting now.
This is the name of a French gentleman who appeared during the Revolution, doing the most dastardly deeds to people who met...
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged.
A
Why?
hesitation.
I think that was a hesitation, Derek. I agree. 15 seconds left for you with Robespierre, starting now.
One of my nightmares as a child was imagining that this fellow had come to see me on a dark night in July. I've always thought it'd be awfully nice to live in the time of the French Revolution.
Clement Freud has challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
There was no hesitation. He kept going. No, it sounded very strange, but it wasn't hesitation. He said, awful, guy. The audience, was that hesitation, audience? No, it wasn't hesitation.
No good asking then. About it.
Why
We're
not?
up here. We can see the muscles moving, can't we?
Well, so can the audience. They've got as good a view as you, Kenneth. There are 7 seconds left for Robespierre. Derek, starting now.
Yes, a lot of Robespierre's friends went out, sans Colette, which means...
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why? Oh, it's a mistake. I'm sorry. He's trying out his buzz. It's not working. No points scored. There are still 5 seconds left for Derek to continue with Robespierre, starting now.
Which means not having your knickers on. And the thing people used to say
Kenneth
to
Williams,
those...
why have you challenged?
I've resisted. Deviation.
Yes.
I've not come here to listen to a load of filth.
All right, I'm sure that Robespierre...
Underwear in a program like this with people, family audience. Discussing underwear.
In other
They don't
words-
come here to hear a load of stuff about underwear.
You've mentioned the word underwear. In other words, you don't think that
Well, I
Robespierre...
won't use the word he's using, have I? Gracious.
Am I to
Well,
understand,
the egg of
Kenneth, in other words, you don't think that Robespierre ever wore knickers? All right, I agree with that, Kenneth, so you have a point. And there are 3 seconds left for Robespierre, Kenneth, starting now.
Vous avez ce geste par moi, ouvrez la porte. Those are the famous words.
Well,
That was French, that was.
I'm glad you told us. We weren't quite sure. At the end of that round, Kenneth Williams was speaking when the
I'm
whistle
in the
went.
lead, so I'm in the lead.
No,
am I?
you're not in the lead. Shut up for a minute. But he has got 3 points now, alongside Clement Fraud's fraud. Clement Fraud's freed. Clement Freud's 4. And Jacqueline is just behind them. But Derek has a very definite lead at the end of that round. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject is rather aptly at this moment that I should have to say this: concealing mistakes. So, Clement, would you talk about concealing mistakes? 60 seconds starting now.
The best way of concealing mistakes is not admitting to them. For instance, if you were to walk down a street, say 187 yards on a moonlit night, and suddenly pass a lamppost and say to it, "Good evening, police officer," and the lamppost doesn't reply, you would then
Derek
be
Nimmo, why
entirely
don't you jump
into the
justified
lamppost?
in...
Yes, we've had this lamppost more than once.
Yeah, but it was ever so good. I was
We loved it all, and we loved the lamppost, too.
missed a treat.
You missed it, yes.
Well, you're very keen at the game, Clement. Get back in again and finish the story. But as chairman, I've got to award according to the rules of the game, and that is a repetition. So Derek gains a point, and the subject, 40 seconds left, starting now.
An awfully good way of starting afresh and concealing mistakes is turning over a new leaf. I'm always trying to do that, particularly when I'm speaking French. Je veux te serrer ton méval, je veux être ton amant. It's something which Kenneth Williams would awfully like to say.
Turning over a new leaf has nothing to do with the subject. The subject is concealing mistakes. Turning over a new leaf is another subject entirely. He's deviating. He's been deviating all the time. And as for that rogue's peering round at you, I've never heard so loaded codswallop.
I wouldn't go on about that, because you think that was unfair to you, but a lot of people might think that's unfair to Derek in giving Robespierre's knickers back to you.
I don't
Because
want
you
these
not-
knickers, and I wish you wouldn't keep bringing it up.
You got a point for
I've got
that.
enough here.
You got a point for that, and a point for speaking when the whistle went. So you actually had a slight bonus there.
Oh, good.
No, he did actually say something about turning over a leaf and concealing mistakes, and went on about something to do with concealing mistakes when he was talking French. All sounded very odd, but he didn't deviate from the subject of the card. 30 seconds left for Derek Nimmo with another point to continue concealing mistakes starting now.
Well, when Kenneth Williams makes a mistake, he shouts everybody down.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation, I am nothing to do with concealing mistakes. I am the most obvious mistake.
Kenneth, look, will you answer me truthfully? Did you say that just to give us a little entertainment, or was it a serious challenge?
No, all genius
It was a
is a
serious-
mistake. I mean, if you're of the herd, if you're common, then you're ordinary. If you're uncommon and extraordinary, then you're a mistake. You see, and I'm a mistake.
Well, I'm afraid the audience love you so much, they can't think of you a mistake in that way. That all that happens is Derek gets another point. There are 27 seconds left for concealing mistakes, Derek, starting now.
If you are a member of the fraud squad, that is set up by the...
Jacqueline McKenzie, you challenge.
A hesitation.
Yes, I agree, there was a
Quite
hesitation on
agree.
that occasion.
Well done.
Jacqueline, you take over the subject, you'll get another point. And there are 21 seconds left for concealing mistakes, starting now.
Well, it's impossible to conceal mistakes on this program because everybody appears to be inventing the rules.
Derek, number one, you challenge.
Listen, I'm always concealing mistakes. Not a problem at all.
I disagree. I don't think you often do conceal your mistakes, so Jacqueline McKenzie has another point.
Jolly good.
And there are 16 seconds left for Jacqueline to continue with the subject, starting now.
So on this program, the thing to do is to behave.
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged again.
Repetition of program.
Yes, I'm afraid that's true. You see, this is the trouble, Derek. You came in and she got another point, and now she has to start again, which is very difficult, so she used the same word again. No, it's quite true, though. It was a correct challenge. You'll gain a point. 13 seconds left, Derek. Concealing mistakes, starting now.
Chartered accountants gain for this a great deal. They examine the books of large companies, particularly if the police ask them to, and go through them most carefully in
Clement
their...
Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
The police don't ask chartered accountants.
Yes, that's very true. Oh, how right you are, my goodness.
Oh, Kenneth, keep quiet for a second. It's got nothing to do with you. It is quite possible, you know, that the police could, in a certain situation, ask a chartered accountant to look through the books. It might not be the chartered accountant for that firm, because they might be wishing to check on something, and they ask another
You make the
independent
whole of
chartered
English
accountant.
life sound like a French farce. You make up all this certain situation.
The way you play this game sounds like a French farce on occasion. No, it is possible that they could ask a chartered accountant to look through the books.
In
So I-
Robespierre's knickers, I know.
That's Who didn't like saying the word? There are 5 seconds left for Derek Nimmo to continue with the subject, concealing mistakes. Derek, starting
The
now.
Board of Trade also often are asked to look into and examine.
Jacqueline Mackenzie, your turn to begin. Oh, what a wonderful subject for you, your first one round. How I feel at this moment. Now, can you tell us, Jacqueline, how you feel at this moment, starting now?
How I feel at this moment is succinctly deranged, faced by these three gentlemen who are determined to put me off everything I attempt to say. I would like to take a more substantial evidence of my sensations. It can be approached in two ways. From the outside, which I would like to ask Mr. Nimmo to help me to do, as he is next to me, by touching me objectively, while I continue subjectively with...
I'm sorry, Jacqueline Mackenzie, you've challenged yourself.
Well, Derek Nimmo was deviating.
She's a clever girl, isn't she? Not only a clever girl, she's very quick at picking up the game. Jacqueline, you've challenged yourself very cleverly. You get yourself a point. You keep the subject. What other little ploy have you... 31 seconds left for how I feel at this moment, Jacqueline, starting now.
Well, my susceptibilities range all over.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
We've had those.
What, her susceptibilities?
Yes.
I don't remember your susceptibilities coming in before. Did they?
We haven't had those, evidently.
Her susceptibilities. No, so she has another point. 29 seconds left for how I feel at this moment, Jacqueline, starting now.
On my nervous system, which is getting gradually more and more tense.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
More and more repetition.
Derek Nimmo, I will show you this piece of paper on which your lead is so commanding. I'm going to say... Yes, it was absolutely genuine.
Whether his lead commanding or not's not the point. It was more and more, and that's repetition.
I suggest it was much more progression
I
of my
am
feelings.
a judge in the sense that I feel I should show a little chivalry and consideration to a lady who's joined us for the first time.
galant bit.
Yes. And Derek is the one, with his lead as it is, who can afford to cast aside a point.
Sorry,
No, that's all right. No, Derek, it was absolutely genuine, but I think you would agree with me that Jacqueline should continue about how she feels this moment.
You're concealing a mistake.
You're absolutely right, but I'm going to give a point to Jacqueline Mackenzie, and she tells us more about how she feels this moment, and there are 24 seconds left starting now.
Which is not to conceal a single mistake. I will now have to take over Derek Nimmo's share, talking about my texturial and tactile aspects, such as leaning against cushions, or men's hairy chins, or even bath water.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
3 oars.
In the bath water, she had a different type of oar, I think. Jacqueline Mackenzie has another point and 9 seconds to continue with how she feels at this moment, starting now.
Endlessly on to just a minute. This...
Kenneth Williams, why...
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree that time.
It was for a minute.
What?
It was for a minute.
Yes, you can't hesitate even for a second. Kenneth, you have a point, and there are 5 seconds left for how I feel at this moment, starting now.
I am throbbing with a natural excitement when I exude my own animal magnetism. So that means I'm in the lead, right?
No,
I
it's not
must be in the lead. Yes, of course, he's doing the figures, isn't he?
Oh. You've just...
Great, I think
at the end of that... I must explain to... It's very difficult for me to explain to the listeners what occurred there. Kenneth did actually come over and look over my shoulder to see if he was in the lead. He was so shocked to see that he was in 3rd place that he stuck his posterior out and waddled back to his seat. And that was what made the audience laugh. It's still sticking out, actually. So, at the end of that round, Jacqueline Mackenzie has crept up a little, but they're trailing quite a bit behind Derek Nimmo. And Kenneth, will you like to begin the next round for us? The subject is permissiveness. The audience obviously seem to think you can talk well on that subject, so can you begin now?
As it is used today, it is taken to denote a kind of toleration which I do not approve of. People going around behaving disgracefully, organizing marches, protests, dressing up, funny air, disgraceful smells, and appalling I haven't finished, do you mind?
A repetition of disgraceful.
Yes, you did say disgraceful twice, unfortunately.
Did I?
Yes. It's a great pity, because obviously you wanted to tell us all the rest of the story. But, Derek, I agree with the challenge. There are 37 seconds left for you to talk about permissiveness, starting now.
What people today call permissiveness seems to me to be a new frankness, which is something which I personally welcome. In Victorian times, life was much more.
Kenneth Williams, wife, your challenge.
Deviation. He says in Victorian times life was much more. How does he know what it was like in Victorian times?
Well, he's quite capable of reading, you know, and there's been some very good books written on the subject. And how else can we learn about it? You're a great historian yourself, Kenneth. How have you learned about
He
Cromwell
should say
and
then,
Rose?
in Victorian times, allegedly, it was so and so and so.
Kenneth, are you going to tell anybody how... Audience, quiet. You're being permissive, audience. You're on his Kenneth's side. No. I mean, how else can anybody discover about anything? No, it's quite unjustified, in spite of what the audience think. There are 26 seconds left for Derek to continue with permissiveness, starting now.
If you pick up the popular newspapers today, they're filled with articles about this permissiveness. Do you like it? Do you think this helpful?
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Well, it was all rubbish, I mean.
You may think it was rubbish, but he wasn't deviating from the subject, so Derek has another point. It continues.
Well, I haven't said anything for ages.
You've just spoken.
No, I mean, had a long go.
I'm afraid it's been one of those shows where nobody really has had a long go except Derek Nimmo. He's rather taken over the show this week, but still that happens sometimes, and even the best, and therefore people who write in and say, I favour one or the other, which is entirely untrue, will show that this isn't, because here's Derek running away with it. There are 18 seconds left for permissiveness, Derek, starting now.
The hypocrisy of the 19th century is something which I very much abhor. I do think...
Jacqueline Mackenzie, why have you challenged?
It wasn't about hypocrisy.
No, he said he abhorred it as opposed to the permissiveness of the present age. I think he got that quite clear. All that happens is Derek has another point. There are 12 seconds left for permissiveness, starting now.
The streets and that era were filled
Clement
with...
Freud, why did you challenge?
I'd like Derek to have another point.
You haven't heard from you for quite a long time. We did hear from you then, and I think it's very generous of you to give Derek yet another point. He doesn't need it, actually. He is going to win, I can assure you of that. So Derek has another point, and there are 7 seconds left for permissiveness, starting now.
I think sometimes on a bus it's awfully nice to ignore the notice which says, don't spit here.
I might tell you that dear Messiter, who holds the stopwatch for us, even got permissive himself and let the watch run on after that last challenge, so only had to guess the last number of seconds. But I don't think there was any doubt about it, that Derek has not only got a lot more points, and we have to come to the end of the show for this week. Let me tell you that Clement Freud and Kenneth Williams were both equal in third place. They were just behind Jacqueline Mackenzie, who perhaps got a little encouragement from the chairman, as it was her first
You're
time.
not kidding me.
But there's no doubt about it. This week's winner by I can't think.
Overwhelming.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I need some, by an overwhelming,
Majority.
by a commanding lead, an overwhelming majority of points, was Derek Nimmo. I think that is what actually is often termed a popular win. So thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope everybody listening has enjoyed it, and from us all here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parson. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hamish. present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Jacqueline Mackenzie in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, we welcome the four keen competitors to do battle, and they're all going to try and speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviation. That is, without deviating from the subject on the card. And according to how well they do it, and how often they're challenged, they will either gain points or give them away. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, a very apt subject for you, and a marvelous subject, I think, to begin the show with: panic. Kenneth, will you talk to us about panic for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, this sort of thing generally sets in when the circumstances appear to be outside of the range of one's normal control. If a person understands...
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
What?
Why have you challenged Clement?
What, the batteries run down?
The battery on your buzzer or the... So on what basis do you challenge then?
But I think maybe the audience...
The audience have definitely said that you won a point, but I wanted to know what you think.
I thought he slowed down beyond the realms of decency.
It's not the point. It's hesitation you got.
Yes, but there must become a point, Kenneth, when you get so
There's
slow.
no point. This goes about hesitation, deviation, or repetition, and I did none of those three things.
No, but you got...
So don't flannel me, mate.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Kenneth Williams Show. There must come a point, Kenneth, when you do go so slowly that it becomes, I think, interpreted as hesitation. I am not going to be the judge. If you agree with Clement Freud's challenge of a hesitation because of the slowness, will you cheer? If you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? You see, Kenneth? Clement Freud has a point. And there are 47 seconds left for panic, Clement, starting now.
In the 1920s, Panic was one of the finest 6-furlong sprinters to be seen on the racecourses of England. He won victories at Great Yarmouth, Newmarket, Devon and Exeter, and there was one occasion late in June at Ludlow.
Kenneth Williams, right?
I think his batteries are running down.
It's very clever. Did you see, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, how Kenneth suddenly got the idea and suddenly leapt forward? All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll be utterly fair about this. I put the decision last time about batteries.
put it to them again.
All right. If you agree with Kenneth Williams' challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And you all do it together now. It wasn't as decisive as last time, but I would say the cheers just got it. Yes, just got it. Wasn't decisive, you see.
Of course they've just got a Jack Eggs Rags on my side.
You cheered as well, did you?
Yeah.
All right, then. Clement Freud, who is so clever again, I'm sure can afford to be magnanimous and allow you to take over the subject of panic again, having gained a point. 19 seconds left, starting now.
Very often leads to hysteria and a great screaming and shouting, rush for the doors, and people falling over each other in the melee. Police called and fire brigades. Horrible mutilations everywhere. Oh, my legs! Oh, my arms! Where's my head?
Clement Freud challenged just before the whistle went.
Repetition of oh my. Oh my legs, oh my arms.
It's true, isn't it? It's true. I've got to give it to him. He's so clever getting in just before the whistle goes. So, Clement, I have to agree with you. You gain another point. You take over the subject of panic, and there are 2 seconds left, starting now.
Sandown Park on the outskirts of London.
For those of you who may not know, the whistle, which is blown so beautifully by Ian Messiter, who sits beside me, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gets an extra point. This occasion was Clement Freud, so he now has a very commanding lead over everybody else at the end of that round. In fact, 2 people have yet to score, and Kenneth Williams has 1. Oh, Clement, it's your turn to begin the next round. The subject that's been thought of for you is 12th birthdays. So can you talk about 12th birthdays for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, by a strange coincidence, this is exactly what is occurring in my family at this moment. And what we do is we go out and purchase macaroons and donuts, jam tarts, waffles, jellies, custards, and make biscuits, sandwiches of tomato and cheese, pickled chutney, relish, horseradish, to which he's particularly partial, and we get a cake with 12 candles, and by means of deploying a dozen matches, each of these static lights is lit, or made active, as they say in television. Then do we gather around this festive board, and my wife, the honest butler, the carriage attendant, and our chauffeur sing happy birthday to you,
Derek, no,
joyous
challenge.
anniversary
Why?
for the cheerful celebrations, dear Dominic, utter glumptiousness on the occasion of the renewal of your date of birth.
Not only kept going for 60 seconds, he kept going in spite of challenges. You weren't challenged. What was
Well,
it?
deviation. I don't think his wife is an honest butler.
I don't know what her maiden name was, actually. But, no. I mean, obviously you can refer to your wife, especially if you're using a literary phrase. So, Clement, I have to agree with you. You gain another point, and there are 2 seconds left, starting now.
Up in a Christmas tree.
Well, Clement Freud got a strange subject, and in spite of the challenges, he kept going throughout to the end, and he has increased his lead quite considerably over everybody else at the end of that round. Jacqueline Mackenzie, will you begin the next round? The subject is occasions on which I wear earrings. You've had a little moment to think about the subject, so can you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I hope I'm not very different from other people, but as a rule, I wear earrings on my lobes at occasions, and this is something I haven't done latterly because I wear earrings only in public, on festive events, mostly at night. And latterly, with the fact that clothes aren't often won or worn late at night, I have been there.
Kenneth, as well, you
They're
challenge.
too late at night.
Yes, they were too late at night, and the
A bit
idea of
dull, too, hasn't it?
well, not only that, the idea of clothes not being worn latterly late at night. I wonder what sort of parties Jacqueline attends, actually. Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, so you gain a point, and you take over the subject. There are 37 seconds left. Occasions on which I wear earrings. You may well look shattered. You've had a little moment to think about it. Now tell us, Kenneth, would you the
I didn't
occasions on which...
realise that was the subject.
She said latterly twice, and nobody challenged her way back because they didn't want to get in with it either. So you got in. Will you tell us, Kenneth, for 37 seconds, the occasions on which you wear earrings, starting...
Oh, it's murder. How
Starting now.
Well, the one occasion in which I did do it was
Clement
when I
Freud, why have you
bought it.
challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
The subject's occasions.
Yes, and he's about to tell us about one occasion on
The
which...
one occasion.
The one occasion.
Well, he often uses this expression, the one, the occasion, or
That's
the one
true,
occasion.
I do. He knows me. you see.
I agree that this is not probably the best English, but people do use this expression
right.
colloquially,
You're
and
right.
one has to speak colloquially in this game, otherwise you'll
It's
never
very
get anywhere.
fair. It's very proper.
I'm glad I've been proper with you. I was being Kenneth, you gain another point, because I disagree with the challenge. There are 34 seconds left for you to tell us the occasions on which I wear earrings, starting now.
I remember purchasing these for a lady, and it occurred to me that I should try them out apropos of the... No, apropos.
Derek, never wild your challenge.
Well, to apropos.
Well, I
application
meant, you
before.
see, you're not supposed to
Look,
say
you've been
apropos
hinted
of.
at it,
You're supposed
because
to
you
say
do it-
apropos the thing, not
Yes.
supposed to say apropos of it. That's what I was trying to correct myself. You see what I
They
mean?
made you self-conscious about your English because you said the occasion.
That's what I mean,
Yes,
yes.
of course. But unfortunately, I have to agree with the challenges. It was legitimate. Derek gains a point.
Lackaday-roo.
We must ask him on the program one time, mustn't we? There are 21 seconds left, Derek, for you to continue. Occasions on which I wear earrings, starting now.
Whenever I go to a boy's 12th birthday, I always wear the most magnificent pair of sequined earrings, and I go on to my hair
horse, which is a lovely white stallion, riding across the desert on my way there. And when I get and they see them, they
I'm
all...
sorry, the buzzer didn't sound, but actually, the light in front of me tells me that Kenneth Williams challenged you, Derek. Why, Kenneth?
Because it's patently obvious that it was all lies.
Well, we don't know. It might be patently obvious to you, but we don't know. And therefore, as we have no means of judging, we just have to accept his word. And because he wasn't deviating from the subject on the card, and he continues with occasions on which I wear earrings with another point, Derek. 11 seconds left, starting now.
Another time was when I was at Chiswick Empire in Aladdin and I was playing the Grand Vizier and I had 2 large gold earrings which I found awfully attractive and the audience used to applaud them every night when I went on stage.
Derek was speaking then when the whistle went. He gains another point. He's now in second place, equal with Kenneth Williams, who are both trailing a little behind our leader still, Clement Freud. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. The subject is the art of listening. Would you talk to us for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
The art of listening consists in appearing to be interested whether you are, in fact, or not. And it is something I have never really mastered, in the sense of mastery. But, of course, one can incline the head and appear to be interested. I find it very, very difficult, and I say I often nod off. I frequently nod off.
Clement Freud, you challenge. Why?
Well, where does one start?
Well, all right.
Not off, not off.
Not off, not off, not off. And Clement, I agree with the challenge. You gain a point. You take over the subject. 33 seconds left. The art of listening, starting now.
This is really a very difficult subject on which to talk, because ideally one says nothing, inclines one's head, as my colleague Kenneth Williams so wisely stated.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
No, it's repetition.
Why?
You just said I said it.
I did say
yes,
incline your head. I just said it.
Yes, but you said it, but he didn't say it before. And that's when you're repetitious, when you're speaking with the subject, when you repeat it. But something that you've actually said before, not in reference to somebody else who said something. So it's not a clear challenge. I mean, it's not a legitimate one. So Clement gets another point, and there are 18 seconds left for the art of listening, starting now.
Arthur III, Earl of Shrewsbury, was possibly the greatest exponent of this art, and many memorial statues have been put up in cities and county towns in England, showing this good man, this noble, virtuous soldier, inclined...
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
Sir Earl Shrewsbury wasn't a soldier.
How do you know? How does Clement know? How do I know? How does anybody in the audience know? He might have been a soldier. He might have been in the local home guard. He might have been in the local home guard. You never know the
The
time.
title's too old. There wasn't any.
Of course, Derek knows this subject. You see, he's caught you out. This is the much...
You don't even know which Earl of Shrewsbury you're referring
The
to.
third Earl of Shrewsbury, he said.
Yeah, and he was definitely not a soldier.
Definitely not a soldier.
Ladies and gentlemen, he might have done some soldiering. We do not know for certain. So if you agree with Derek's challenge, would you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? You have decided that the third Earl of Shrewsbury never did any soldiering. And if there's any relations of his now, descendants of his listening in, and they thought that their ancestor did a little bit of soldiering, the honor of the family, then I apologize for our audience. But Derek Nemo gains a point and takes over the subject of the art of listening. 5 seconds left, starting now.
The second Lord Chesterfield, on the other hand, was the most splendid listener and was known through Whig society.
On that occasion, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, so he gains another point, but he's still in second place behind Clement Freud. Kenneth Williams is in third place, a little way behind, and Jacqueline is trailing a little behind Kenneth. Jack's turn to begin the next round. It's tidying out my drawers. Can you talk to us about tidying out my drawers for 60 seconds, starting now?
Tidying out my drawers has been the bane of my existence because I live most of the time in a suitcase and I don't have those parts of a wardrobe within that transportation piece of item article. I spend my time tidying out other people's various receptacles for clothes, underwear, nasty pieces of paper, sweet papers that usually belong to...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Paper.
Yes, there were 2 pieces of paper. There was an awful lot of words that didn't make sense, too, but there was definitely 2 pieces of paper.
So do my
Clement,
drawers make any sense?
Clement, you have got the subjects, and I defy you to continue in the same tone.
You define?
Yes.
You should encourage and help, not define.
I defy him not to lower the standard
Oh, I
of the program.
see. Oh, well, expressions are more articulate.
Give me a chance. Tidying up my drawers, Clement, can you talk to us on that for 34 seconds, starting now?
I find this a very substantial task because my drawers are very much longer than most other people's. And I begin by removing any hairs from my knees and upper thigh, whereafter I rise gently on the anatomy.
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
I wish I hadn't.
So all that happens if you take back the challenge is that because you pressed your buzzer, Clement gains a point and continues for 18 seconds, tidying out my drawers, starting now.
There are also sideboards which contain pants and vests, shirts, collars.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Sideboards couldn't possibly contain vests and pants. They come down from your ears and you couldn't get them.
And even, of course, Kenneth, even if you take sideboards in the other sense, that he has a sideboard in the dining room and he keeps his vest and pants in it, it's very devious, isn't it?
Yeah.
So on both scores, I must obviously give it to you and say that you have 14 seconds left for tidying up my drawers, starting now.
This is ridiculous and it should be retitled Tidying Up. I have never in my life heard the word accompanied by out, and it should never have been put so in the first place. Ian Messiter should be publicly catechized.
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
He's not talking about the subject, just sort of castigating me.
Of course I'm discussing the subject. I'm discussing the subject. Now should be phrased. How dare! Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yes, he's right.
I've been affronted.
Leave him alone.
So, thank you, Ken.
All right, anybody else want to speak up for Kenneth Williams before the chairman says something? All right, so there we are. But you see, Derek, quite fairly, he was speaking about the subject on the card. And he was being very cruel to Ian Messiter and criticising him for the way
Who thought
wrote
up the
it down.
game.
And thought up the game. Who invited you to be on the programme.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very horrid, Kenny, if you think about it.
So, but you gained a point, so what does it matter? That's all that matters, isn't it, this game? The point. So, there are 2 seconds left for tidying out my drawers, Kenneth, starting now.
On the other hand, he draws me out, which is a very good thing for that.
Kenneth's drawers have given him a leap forward. And he's gone from 4th to 3rd place, just behind Derek, who's still quite a way behind Clement Freud, who's still in the lead. Derek, a good subject for you to begin the next round with. Charlie. Can you talk to us about Charlie for 60 seconds, starting now?
I am proud to be able to say here that I am the original Charlie. There are lots of imitators, but when people see me in the street, my goodness, they say he's a right Charlie, and there I am! And I admit to it immediately. Also, of course, one thinks of speed bonny boat like a bird on the wing, over the sea to sky, carrying the lad that's born to be king. What's the matter? It's only buzz.
No. Clement Freud has buzz now.
I'm so sorry, I thought I had a buzz.
The hush put us in awe,
Oh.
but your actual delivery on that occasion put us in even more awestruck awe.
Ah.
And that's why you paused. Clement Freud got him first with his challenge. Why have you challenged, Clement?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree. Clement, you gain a point. 30 seconds left for Charlie, starting now.
Charlie is my darling, my...
Very member your challenge.
Well, it must be deviation.
All right, take the subject and a point, and 26 seconds left for Charlie, starting now.
I once appeared in a musical comedy in the Strand with that name and a girl on the end of it. And goodness me, it was a happy time. All sorts of jolly chums I made. Dame Anna Neagle, full stop, who was there with me, most lovely lady, and other people too, if I could only think who was the most beautiful of
Jacqueline
them all.
Mackenzie, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Yes, I think there was.
Yes,
of course,
quite
yes.
right.
So, Jacqueline, you gain a point and the subject. There are 5 seconds left for Charlie, starting now.
Well, for my money, the greatest Charlie of all was Charlie Chaplin, Cockney, and a great...
Jacqueline Mackenzie was then speaking when the whistle went. She gains another point for that. She is still, alas, in fourth place behind Kenneth. Kenneth is just 2 points behind Derek, but they're all quite a few points behind Clement Freud. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Sunday. Can you talk to us for about a minute on that, starting now?
A day of solemnity when one hears church bells ringing,
A hateful sound, and indeed I wrote to this vicar and said, can't you stop them? And he said, no, it's the established church. We have the right to ring them whenever we like, to call them to worship. I said, well, do it another way. There's all sorts of modern ways you can do it. You don't have to say blang, blang, blang.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
It goes on, banging,
blang.
crashing all about. The reverberation of
blang.
I've known it, but mind you, they say the cracking Big Ben gives it its lovely quality, don't they? Have you heard that saying? It's actually cracked right away.
You bland.
Don't challenge me.
Derek challenged you.
We're
and you
on ground.
Blang, blang.
blang, and you tried to blang your way out of it.
That was onomatopoeic.
So there we are. Derek, I agree with the challenge. A repetition of bangs, and you gain a point and the subject, and there are 35 seconds left for Sunday starting now.
Sometimes I leap into my motor car and drive down to the coast. And there I have a little boat with a blue sail and a white hull. And I get into it and float across the waves with the oars going 1, 2, 3, because I have one at the front and 2 more at the back. And then
Clement Freud is challenged you.
Repetition of both 1 and 2.
Yes, that's right. You have one at the front, you said 1, 2, 3.
Absolutely right.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, goodness.
Clement has a point, and there are 17 seconds left for Sunday, starting now.
The 5th Lord Brecknock once said to his second wife that of the
Jacqueline
7...
Mackenzie, why have you
There's
challenged?
absolutely no 5th Lord Brecknock.
He means the pub.
Obviously, as I was not prepared to judge on whether the 3rd Earl of Shrewsbury did any soldiering, I am not going to judge on the 5th Earl Brecknock. Clement Freud gains another point, therefore, and he has 13 seconds for Sunday, starting now.
Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week.
Kenneth Williams' wife, who challenged.
Saturday night is not what we're discussing. It's Sunday, and I don't see how, by any stretch of the imagination, you can possibly introduce Saturday night into this discussion. I'm moved. I'm impassioned.
You're absolutely passionate. And probably the reason you introduced it is because it's the day before Sunday. Has it not occurred to you? And so I'm afraid you didn't give him a chance. So though I'd love to hear you go further on Sunday, I must be fair according to the rules of the game. Yes. And say Clement has another point, and there are 10 seconds left for Sunday. Clement, starting now.
Because that is the night my sweetheart and I used to dance to
Derek Nimmo, challenge, right.
No hesitation.
Derek Nimmo has gained a point for a legitimate challenge. He takes over the subject with 7 seconds left for Sunday, starting now.
One Sunday, on the Isle of Shuna, I turned to the Dowager Viscountess Selby and said...
Kenneth Williams, why have you
We
challenged?
all know there's no such person.
It's a pub, Kenneth.
Well, Jacqueline, how do you turn to a pub and speak to her?
Easily.
Yes, and speak to her, Kenneth?
And if
All
this
right.
dowager lady exists, she'll be furious if you say she's a pub.
All right, in deference to her ladyship, we'll say that Derek Nimmo has a point for an incorrect challenge. 2 seconds left, starting now.
Let's go down to the jetty,
I'm sorry to have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's no more time to play this particular game of Just a Minute. Jacqueline Mackenzie was just in 4th place behind Kenneth Williams, who trained a little behind Derek Nimmo, who was in 2nd place. But our leader and winner this week was Clement Freud. For the sake of the chairman, the panel in future will stop bringing in names of the aristocracy. I find it very difficult to judge whether they're dead or alive. Well, we do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud and Joan Turner in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And it's my pleasure today to welcome for the first time to the program Joan Turner, who's going to try and pit her wits against these three clever exponents of the game. And once again, I'm going to ask them all if they can speak for just a minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do it and whether they're challenged or not, they will gain points or their opponents will. And let us begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, can you talk about enjoying life? I'm sure you can very well, so will you start off the show on that subject, 60 seconds, now.
Well, I think travel really helps one to enjoy life tremendously. I awfully like going to the Aegean, perhaps to the Cyclades group of islands, going out on the lovely LA steamer across the wine dark sea, landing at the quayside and being greeted by wonderful Grecian maidens, handing me a glass of ouzo perhaps, or a little octopus, perhaps a cup of coffee. And there are...
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Two perhapses.
Yes, it was quite true. He did say perhaps twice, so I agree with the challenge. You get a point. You take over the subject. There are 37 seconds left. Enjoying life starting now.
It is utterly unnecessary to travel in order to enjoy life. You may have the most...
Derek Nimmo, you have challenged. Why?
Well, deviation, it is necessary to me, so it can't be utterly unnecessary.
In Clement Freud's neck of the woods, which is a phrase everybody seems to use these days, it can be. After all, he's not deviating from the subject. According to his ideas and opinion, it could be. So I'm afraid I have to disagree with your challenge, Derek. Clement gains a point, keeps the subject, 31 seconds left, enjoying life, starting now.
For instance, you can have a ball wallowing among the bickies and cakes at the bottom of your tin. Other people like to stuff themselves absolutely to their limits with chicken and turkey, with blackberries, red currants, all sorts of deliciousnesses which are seasonally...
Derek Nimmo.
Hesitation, perhaps.
Hesitation, certainly. So you get the subject back, you gain a point. There are 2 seconds left. Enjoying life, starting now.
The little cock robin sitting on the...
For those of you who may be new to the game, and I believe we even have one or two in our audience tonight, I must explain that when the whistle goes, that tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. In this occasion, it was Derek Nimmo, so he now has a lead of 1 at the end of that round over Clement Freud, and Kenneth Williams and Joan have yet to score. Kenneth, your turn to begin. Henry VIII. We know your historical bias and knowledge, so can you talk to us about Henry VIII for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, of course, it is extraordinary this beautiful-looking young man should have become such a gross monstrosity and should have resulted having been given the title.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Well, deviation, I think it's totally unfair in talking about Clement Freud.
I think the audience are very unfair, do you, Clement? Do you notice they all clapped there? Well, all I can say, Derek, is the audience enjoyed it as much as we did, and Clement Freud, bless his heart. So there we are. We won't score any points for that horrible challenge. I will say that Kenneth still has the subject, and there are 46 seconds left, nothing scored. Henry VIII, Kenneth, starting now.
In fairness, it must be said that he did believe in marrying the wife of his dead brother. He was committing a sin and did write a great treatise on the subject, for which he was given the title Defender of the Faith. Later on, this same gross creature
great.
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Repetition of grace.
Ah, but I said in the other place, not in this place. That's all right. It was in another place.
It doesn't matter which place
Remember
you
the
said
Jew
it
of
in.
Malta? That was another place.
It was another time in this present 60 seconds, but you have repeated gross since you started speaking.
Well, he was gross.
You can't get out of it however grossly you try.
Well, I want us to go on a bit more. I don't want to just finish now. I mean, I just got worked up. You
I
can
could
see,
see
Joe.
Kenneth, you're quite right.
Yes,
I
mean,
found
I'm
it a most
throbbing
interesting
now.
story. And I don't care
You know
if
what I
it
mean?
takes an hour. I'd like to hear the whole thing.
Thank you, darling. Thank you. I've got at least
Have
one...
you two finished?
Oh, sorry.
There we are. That's right. You've had a little throb, Kenneth. So can we get back? Derek Nimmo, I agree with your challenge. Repetition of gross. So you take the subject over, and there are 24 seconds left. Henry VIII, starting now.
To get his divorce, of course, he had to go around various universities in Europe to find one that was able to come to the same conclusion as he had. But this had a very beneficial result, because this was the founding of the Church of England, the episcopate of which we are all so proud, and it is through that same Henry that we now have presiding and wandering around.
Derek Nimmo was speaking then when the whistle went, so he gains yet another point. And did you notice that once Derek starts going on any ecclesiastical subject, that odd tone comes into his voice, and nobody dares to challenge him, because
Yes, it's all ash, doesn't it?
however much they feel that there might have been some discrepancies. Anyway, that means that Derek has increased his lead at the end of that round to everybody else. And Clement Freud, your turn to begin. My first car. Would you tell us all about that? 60 seconds starting now.
My first car is silver and smart and has 5 wheels and a chauffeur, as opposed to my second car, which is grotty and dark blue and doesn't have anyone to drive it at all. I think mentioning my first car, it would be a tremendous mistake if I ignored speaking of my third car, which is puce. Some people say heliotrope or purple, and doesn't go at all, and in fact stays in our garage, where the assistant driver sometimes looks after it and wipes it. But to revert to my first car, it has stereo, audio, and phonio, which is the name of the person in charge of the wheel. And many a time have I leaned forward into the speaking tube and said, "Listen, you up there, go a little faster," or alternatively, turn the wheels.
Ah, Derek Nimmo challenged.
Well, hesitation, I'm afraid.
Yes,
That's awfully mean of
yes,
you.
2 seconds to go. He almost made it.
You almost made it.
So, Derek, you gain a point, and there are 2 seconds left for my first car, starting now.
It was 1936 Buick, and I always had to use chewing gum.
Well, on that occasion, Derek Nimmo was speaking. When the whistle went, he gains yet another point, increases his lead at the end of that round. And Joan Turner, will you begin the next... In fact, you have to begin the next round because it's your turn. Top notes. What a marvellous subject that Ian Messer's chosen for you.
Yes, well, it's...
Can you talk to us about your top notes, Joan?
Top notes.
Starting now.
Start now. Oh, oh stop it, Derek. All together.
Clement Freud is challenged.
No, he hasn't. He can't do it. Because
He
I
has
haven't.
challenged. He has
No, I
challenged.
haven't finished speaking yet.
You hadn't started speaking.
We've gone for 9 seconds. So,
Repetition of the top C.
No, I only did it once. Oh, no, it was twice. It was once with Derek
I'm
and
glad
once
you
on
were
my
honest
own.
about it, because my pitch is not such that I could have said it was autopsy. Well done, Clement. There are 51 seconds for your top notes, starting now. Derek Nimmo, you challenge. Hesitation, yes, you get a point. Take over the subject. 49 seconds, your top notes, starting now.
It's £100 note, and I keep it in a little cupboard at home, and I like it very much.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
Because it's top notes we're discussing, not bank notes.
But his top
No,
note could be
no,
a
no,
bank
come
note.
along now.
I'm not going to come along
Joan
anyway.
has already illustrated it for us, so we know exactly what's under discussion. We
there
cannot go from musical notes to bank notes.
We can
dear.
if we like, as a
Now,
subject.
dear, come on, dear, now then. You're behaving like a
Kenneth.
piece of elastic. You'll stretch yourself so far, you'll split yourself right in the middle.
You're getting a nice lot of laughs, Kenneth, but the subject is top notes. You can interpret that any way you wish. So Derek Nimmo gains another point. I disagree with your challenge. There are 45 seconds left, Derek. Top notes starting now.
Sherpa Tenzing, while sitting on the top of Everest, once wrote a little note to Mr. Edmund Hillary, and he said, "How nice to see you up here." And Edmund Hillary, because they couldn't speak at that height...
Clement Froy, why have you challenged?
2 Edmund Hillarys and no title.
Oh, yes.
We don't have any points for snobbishness.
Right.
He can say without the title if he wishes. But it was a repetition, Clement, so I agree with you. You get a point. You take over the subject. 32 seconds. Top notes starting now.
I think you are dishy, have lovely hair and eyes, and will you come home with me after school? Signed,
You
Veronica...
hesitated.
You're challenging for
You
hesitation.
hesitated. After school.
Joan Turner, you have top notes, and there are 13 seconds left, starting now.
Well, one of my top notes is a note I had from my...
Kenneth Williams, why have you
I'm afraid
challenged?
of hesitation, yes.
It's such a funny story.
Honestly, Kenneth, you wanted to let
you are
Joan have a
awful.
go, and as soon as she
It's
has a
my
go, you
first
challenge
go.
her. Well, all right, I've got to be fair on this. All right, Kenneth.
All
It
right.
is...
If you can tell a funnier
Yes,
note, you
all
do
right.
it. Go on. I bet you can.
I'm going to give it to Joan, because you felt last time it was unfair to Clement, so this time I'm going to be unfair to you, and say Joan has a point for that. And there are 8 seconds left for Joan to continue with top notes,
Yes.
starting now.
Well, as I said before, one of...
Clement Freud is challenged. Darling, with the greatest respect, I've got to give it back to
But
him
she
this
hadn't
time.
said it yet.
What?
She said, as I said before, but she hadn't actually said it.
No, I had
She
to
said
say
well
it.
before, and then she said well, as I've said before.
Yes, she
Get too well.
challenged.
It should have been
Oh,
out
no,
I must be
easy.
fair. I gave it against him last time.
All right,
Clement, you
then.
have the
Let you have
subject
it,
back.
then.
6 seconds left for top notes, starting now.
It was written on parchment with a fine hand, and panographically, many people said, nowhere has there been a...
On that occasion, Clement Froy was speaking when the whistle went. He's gained a little on our leader, Derek Nimmo, and Joan Turner and Kenneth Williams are both trailing somewhat.
What do you
third
mean
place.
trailing? Where am I? How many have I got? I don't know why
I
I
was-
come here, I really don't. I could be insulted in better places than this.
You asked for it. I was being very polite, said he's trailing someone. You said, well, how many have I got? I've got
And
a...
I'd have thought there should have been some points by now awarded.
What for? Cheek? You won before now, Kenneth. Right, Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject is exercise. Can you talk to us for 60 seconds about exercise, starting now?
Yes, I do like to exercise, both my dog and myself, and we can do it concurrently as we wander along any street in Hyde or anywhere else that you happen to name. If you would like to suggest somewhere, I'd be very happy to go along with you. But when I think of dumbbells and Indian clubs, I, like Kenneth Williams, throb. I pick them up with my hands, wave them above my head, and shout, ahoy, I'm fit. And when I feel like that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to say that a very different person emerges from this effete frame. I leap out.
Clement Froy, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
Different people emerging from his frame.
That is good. Oh, that is good.
It's a very clever idea, but he wasn't deviating from the subject. He used an expression about different people emerging. I think it was a colloquial expression. I don't think it's deviating from the subject of exercise. He was trying to demonstrate something using words,
It was
which is...
more like exorcise than exercise.
I think that I give Derek the benefit of the doubt, and there are 22 seconds left, Derek, to continue with exercise, starting now.
One of the most wonderful things about living in this sceptred isle is that we are able to exercise our free will. This is something, ladies and gentlemen, which we are
Clement
hugely
Froy, why
proud
have
of
you
Repetitive,
in this
ladies and
fair...
gentlemen.
We had it last time.
Yes, he's had ladies and gentlemen before, I'm afraid.
Who has? I'm sorry.
It's jolly difficult, you know, sometimes to
Yes, I know.
keep going. You have a phrase that comes to mind because you can't think of something else to say about exercise. Clement, I agree with the challenge on this occasion. You take over the subject. 12 seconds left. Exercise starting now.
Switching on the radio in my first car, I often hear a lady saying, stretch your arms, bend your knees, twiddle your toes, raise your chin, move your ears.
on that occasion, Clement Froy was speaking when the whistle went. He gained another point, and he's now only 2 points behind the leader, Derek Nimmo. Kenneth, your turn to begin. The subject is bubble and squeak. Can you talk to us about bubble and squeak for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is a term that's been applied to myself and Stanley Baxter when, on our forays through the city of London, we have been affectionately nicknamed Bubble and Squeak. He, of course, does the bubbling, being a buoyant and ebullient personality, and I do the squeaking because I'm trying to show my deep reciprocation when they're coming out of my door to my house and making a very nice proposition. I love it from my last book, Little Slipper, and they say to me, oh, ancient British sparkers to Craggy Ithaca, whether you ain't Ulysses, the waxy stuff in the eardrum, in order.
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Well, whatever he's talking about, he's not talking about bubble and squeak.
You know, it's very difficult because I agree with Derek in a way. It's got nothing to do with it. But on the other hand, I mean, you might well say it was a very good interpretation of Kenneth Williams' idea of bubble and squeak. So, as I think he was endeavoring to illustrate then his point about bubble and squeak, I'm going to side with Kenneth on this occasion and say, Kenneth, you have a point at last. Sorry for that. And there are 19 seconds left to continue with your particular bubble and squeak, starting now.
Of course, there is a version that people prepare in frying pans in a kitchen. And Mr. Clement Freud, the notable correspondent on culinary matters, has gone into great detail on this very subject. And he has gone on record...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
I deny it.
You may deny it as often as you like, but I don't think that technically he was deviating from the subject because...
Well, it may be right. Perhaps he ain't gone on about it.
I'm sure he hasn't gone on about it, but in your imagination, because he writes...
Well, I thought, yes, because
yeah.
he writes about it, you might have
Yes.
discussed it, you see.
So I will give Clement Freud a point, because the audience appreciate his remark. Let's give Kenneth Williams a point, too, because he's keeping the subject.
Yes, that's true.
And there are 3 seconds left for Bubble and Squeak, starting now.
A most tasty dish, especially after the Sunday joint.
This laughter at the present moment, ladies and gentlemen, has been caused by the fact that Kenneth Williams has come up to see, at the end of that round, how many points he's got. He could have known himself. He's got 3. And he's in 3rd place. And he's trailing more than somewhat behind Clement Freud and Derek Nimmo. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject is age. Something a lot of people feel sensitive about and conscious of, but can you talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Age is something that many people feel conscious of and sensible about, but I don't particularly have views in this way. The Latins call this Anno Domini, which was a cunning way...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Domini.
Well, it depends. It depends on when you went to school, actually.
That's true, Nick.
Well,
that
and
is true.
because
By
the
goodness,
Latin-
that's right what he says about it depends when you went to school. It changes all the time. I mean, I remember in my day it was etc. Now it's supposed to be et cetera, isn't
Well,
it?
thank you
what
very
you're saying,
much,
though.
Kenneth. Would you like to come over here and be chairman as well as sit
If
down?
I may say, it also depends upon your age.
I was
That's
about to
right.
say that obviously there
This
was a
isn't 5 to
change in
10.
pronunciation of the Latin I at some point. I don't know what year, but I know it happened just... I won't say when because it affected me. Right. Therefore, the challenge, I think the fairest thing to do, as there's 2 pronunciations for it, there'll be no points scored. The subject stays with Clement Freud, who has 47 seconds left for age, Clement, starting now.
53, 49, 26, 88, 91, or...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
88, 2 8s.
I I will give you a point, Derek, only because the audience enjoyed your challenge. I've done it to each one of you now, so that's fair.
That's very fair.
But-
I don't think anyone will contradict with that.
Oh, but the subject stays.
I haven't had a point yet.
Yes, you
Yes,
got
you-
one, you got one.
you
Shut
get
your
a-
mouth, shut your great mouth.
Get a point as well, because it's not a justifiable challenge, because you said 88, and it's what you say that counts, not what is...
Not what is written on the card.
Not what is visually in your mind, 2 8s.
Write it down.
Age is the subject on the card, not 88. So Derek gets a point, and Clement keeps the subject. 42 seconds left, age, starting now.
But 9 could just as well be called an age, because it is, after all, the number of months, the number of days that you have existed.
Derek, number you challenge.
Repetition of number.
There was a repetition of number, yes. So, Derek, you gain another point, and the subject, and there are 33 seconds left for age, starting now.
Tell the age of an oak tree, you have to go into the forest with a large chopper. Then you bang away at that particular tree until it falls.
Clement Freud's challenge, why?
Repetition of tree.
Yes, there was a repetition of tree.
Absolutely
Oak
right.
tree and
Quite
there
right.
was-
Jolly well done, Floyd.
Clement gets another point. It's neck and neck between these two now, really. And there are 25 seconds left for age, starting now.
If you are desirous of ascertaining the age of a horse, it is essential to regard its teeth in order to come to some sort of conclusion. So you go into a field.
Kenneth Williams, why have you
This
challenged?
is rubbish. I mean, who wants to stand around looking at a load of horses' teeth? I've got something better to do with my time. We're going to sit here listening to all this
But
rubbish.
Kenneth, you're obviously trying to bluff your way in again, but I'm afraid
Well, it's
Clement was,
deviation,
he
isn't
was
it?
not deviating from the subject of age. So, Clement Freud, I disagree with the challenge. You gain another point, and there are 14 seconds left for age, starting now.
Frogs can tell age very simply by squawking, and the number of times they open their mouth.
Derek, number, why have you
Number.
challenged?
Repetition of number.
Yes, again. And so Derek gains another point, and there are 8 seconds left for age, starting now.
When I was a very young boy, I used to look forward to old age, but now that I'm getting increasingly elderly, it fills me with despair. Sometimes I go home at night.
That despairing note brought Derek Nimmo another point because he was speaking when the whistle went, and he has a lead of 1 at the end of that round over Clement Freud, who are way out in front of Joan Turner and Kenneth Williams. Joan Turner, your turn to begin. The subject is luck. 60 seconds starting now.
Luck is a 4-letter word, but it's something everyone hopes for. It's a pagan superstition. It's simply God's blessing, and that's what we believe, and we don't believe in superstition in my church. I'm being quite serious now about this. Everyone hopes to win the pools, and everyone has certain superstitions, like you mustn't put shoes on the table. I don't know whether any of you have heard that one, have you? Superstition of putting shoes on the table. No, if you put shoes on the table, it's supposed to be unlucky. Well, of course, it's only unlucky because it's a horrible smell if you have shoes on the table when you're eating your lunch. Of course, there is. Have you challenged me?
Yes,
Oh,
you've been
and
challenged.
Oh, sorry, the challenge has been taken back. Carry on.
if you another superstition, which is also to do with luck, is that if you walk under a ladder, you might. The only reason people don't like walking under a ladder is because you might get a pot of paint on your head. You see, and of course, there's a superstition about the devil. If you spill the salt, you throw the salt over your left shoulder to send the devil away, you see.
You've repeated yourself.
Best of luck.
I must say, at the end of that round, Joan Turner started with the subject of luck, and in spite of repeating herself incessantly and hesitating repeatedly and deviating incessantly, and in spite of being challenged 4 times, which I completely ignored, she kept going for well over 60 seconds. In fact, the watch stopped at one point and we started again. And I think it was magnificent because she's never played the game. And obviously, And obviously, she still hasn't very much idea of how the game should be played. In spite of that, we enjoyed it, Joan. That's the important thing.
Entertaining narrative.
So, give her... how many points should we give her for that? Give her 2, yes, give her 2.
Thank you very much.
You've leapt, literally, from 4th place into 3rd place.
Thank you very much. I suppose it's as far as
Still
I'll get.
miles behind this week's winner, Derek Nemo. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. We do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Mester and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Liz Fraser in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And somebody's whistling. Derek Nemo, it's you. Will you please keep quiet?
Sorry.
Derek, why are you whistling before we've even started?
Just a little seasonal whistling, that's all.
All right, we're all trying to get into the festive spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, and also it's my pleasure to welcome Liz Fraser. For the first time, she's going to try and do battle with these 3 clever protagonists of the game and see what she can do for the distaff side. Once again, I'm going to ask them all to speak if they can for 60 seconds on some subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And of course, according to how well they do it and whether they're challenged, they will gain points or give them away. Clement Freud, will you begin this week, please? The subject, very seasonal, stuffing your Christmas bird. That means, can you talk about that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Any feathered friend which is afloat at this time of year may be called a Christmas bird. And if you're about to stuff one, I think you should take great care not to choose a bird that is too small, like a sparrow or a dove. In fact, a turkey, a chicken, a goose would be ideal animals for this sort of treatment. I feel that it is ignominious to put your hands inside such poultry, and prefer personally to get my stuffing done on the outside, usually in a roasting tray, keeping such implements as I might use in my culinary pursuits cleaner and less infected than they would otherwise be. But there are many.
Derek Nimmo, you challenge. Why?
No hesitation.
No. I'm keeping it with Clement Freud. So he gains a point because I disagree with the challenge. 6 seconds left. Stuffing your Christmas bird, Clement, now.
Some people think that bird being a synonym...
For those of you who may be fairly new to the game, when the whistle goes, it tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud, who now has a commanding lead of 2 over everybody else, because nobody else has yet scored. And, Derek, it's your turn to begin. The subject is stocking fillers. Can you talk to us? That's a dirty laugh in the audience, wasn't it? Anyway, Derek, stocking fillers, 60 seconds, starting now.
Responding to the dirty laugh in the audience, I would say that my favorite stocking filler is long limbs encased in a pair of these same stockings that we are talking about. On the other hand, there is a dear little man who lives in
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
He's talking about legs and suddenly says on the other hand, which must be...
Give Clement Freud an extra point for a clever challenge, but Derek wasn't deviating from the subject on the card. Stocking fillers, Derek, you keep the subject and continue, and there are 42 seconds left, starting now.
In Snowland lives a charming old gentleman with a white beard, as every boy and girl knows.
I didn't know that.
Liz Fraser, you challenged.
Yes, I didn't know that.
She's not a
Well,
boy.
I'm
You're not a
sorry
boy
that you
girl.
don't know it, Liz, and maybe after the show I can explain to you all about Father Christmas. But you see, he wasn't actually deviating from the subject. He was keeping going. The fact that you didn't know about it, unlike everybody else, it's very sad.
It is.
But it means that Derek still keeps the subject, and he gets a point, of course. And there are 35 seconds left. Stocking fillers starting now.
Santa Claus, or Father Christmas, as Nicholas Parsons would say, keeps his stocking fillers in a large sack, which he keeps on the back of his sleigh.
Kenneth Williams has
The
challenged.
word keep occurred twice.
Yes, that is right. You did say keep twice. It was a bit... Yes, you did. It's rather difficult.
Keep.
Small words, not to repeat them occasionally. Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, so you gained a point, and you have 27 seconds for stocking fillers starting now.
Little cuddly bunnies made of cotton wool and harmless material like that, and marzipans, chocolates, and little wafers. You delight.
Liz, madam, you challenged.
He said little twice.
Yes, I'm afraid you did. And she was listening terribly well, got him very sharply there, and because you see, if you press your buzzer first, it eliminates all the other buzzers.
Quite
So you're
right. I don't want to eliminate anybody else's buzzer.
No, well... So, Liz, you've gained a point, and you have 15 seconds now to take over the subject of stocking fillers, starting now.
One of the advantages of growing older and bigger is that one's stockings enlarge with age, which means that one can get more fillings into one's hosiery.
No hesitation.
There was a definite hesitation, I'm afraid, Liz. Derek, you gain a point. I agree with the challenge. So there are 3 seconds left now for you to take over stocking fillers, starting now.
When I wake up on Christmas morning, I find a lovely orange right at the bottom next to something.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Christmas, you said it before.
You did say Christmas before. You used Father Christmas before, and now you've said Christmas. So
Absolutely right. Well listened.
Occasionally they can't think of any other way to argue their way back to it, so they come magnanimous. Kenneth listened well. He got in just with 3/4 of a second to go on stocking fillers. Kenneth, starting now.
Silver bells!
Kenneth Williams is speaking then when the whistle went, so he gains that extra point, and to use his phrase, he has leapt into the lead.
Well,
And
thank
that-
goodness, my record has been abysmal over the last few weeks. Abysmal.
But you've let
It's the
me-
only way I can describe it. It's been abysmal. I've received no
Hello.
kind of encouragement, and we all need a bit of ego massage.
You're behaving in an abysmal way. Yes, because you've leapt into the lead alongside Clement Freud. It's not quite enough to... And Liz Fraser, it's your turn to begin. So the subject is still on the Christmas theme, I'm glad to say, things I've found in crackers. And as a little cracker yourself, Liz, will you talk for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
One of the things that I found in crackers was my husband. It happened like this. I had an invitation some years ago to attend a housewarming party by a friend, and I agreed and accepted with alacrity, and bejeweled and bedecked, I arrived at her abode, and I had the feeling that something very exciting was going to happen. And I looked around the rooms to see if there was some sort of nice man that I could perhaps be attached to. A tall, dark stranger approached me and asked me where the loo was. I didn't know, so I directed him to the hostess who was standing near me at the time, and another man approached me, and we found that we had a great deal in common. For instance, we both enjoyed Derek Nimmo's feet, Clement Freud's cooking, Kenneth Williams' wit, and Nicholas Parsons' milk. And he then proposed to me.
Well,
I must
Liz-
say that the house's name was Crackers.
Liz Fraser has joined us for the first time. She started with a subject, and she managed to keep it right through to the end, so she gets a bonus point for speaking for 60 seconds. Well done, Liz. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is the fairy on the top of the Christmas tree. And that laugh, listeners, was occasioned by the fact that Clement Freud looked very rapidly at every member of the team here to decide which one he thought he should apply this to. and he finished up with Liz Fraser. So the subject is the fairy on the top of the Christmas tree. Clement Freud, 60 seconds, starting now.
Is a very long way up the top of the Christmas tree, as opposed to the fairy lower down on the same piece of...
Liz Fraser, you challenge.
I think hesitation.
You think, and I think, and so you gain a point, Liz, and you take over the subject of the fairy on the top of the Christmas tree. 50 seconds left, starting now.
There are no fairies at the top of our Christmas tree because... I knew I would be able to talk.
Kenneth Williams, your challenge.
Great hesitation.
Yes, I didn't know what I was going to say.
My darling, I don't like to be ungallant, but I could.
Weren't you were being absolutely accurate?
thank you
So,
very
Kenneth,
much.
you get a point. You take over the subject. There are 45 seconds left. The fairy on the top of the Christmas tree, starting now.
She is generally a rather delicate-looking creature with tinsel and porcelain, bison-like features, and everyone says there she is, presiding over this festive gathering and spreading light and joy from the top of her perishing Christmas tree. And it is very pretty, as indeed, of course, it is in the process of decay, as you all know, when you come to clear up those dreadful needles that get everywhere. I once sat on them and had them with appalling trouble afterwards, but only a very greasy emollient eased my anguish.
Challenged. Why?
Well, he's talking about something really rather nasty, which has got nothing to do with the fairy. It was way up on the top of the tree.
Yes, and there are 8 seconds left, Derek, for the fairy on the top of the Christmas tree, starting now.
When I was a small boy, I used to sing a lovely song, which was, every little boy would like to be a fairy.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition.
What?
When I was a small boy.
Oh, that's right, yes. Clement, you gain the subject, and there are 3 seconds left. The fairy on the top of the Christmas tree, starting now.
Her name is Gladys, and she had the most terrible time getting out.
Clement Freud then gained the extra point for speaking when the whistle went. I've never heard of a fairy called Gladys. What a...
It's a pity.
It's a nice
Anyway,
whimsy, isn't it?
Gladys got you an extra point, an extra laugh, and you're now equal in the lead with Kenneth Williams.
Oh, what an honour for you, Clem.
Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject, mistletoe. Can you talk to us about that kissable subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Mistletoe is a rather nasty parasitic creature that grows round fruit trees, apples and pears in particular. It's been used from the ancient times to depict something which is really rather nasty, so we won't talk about that. We'll talk about its modern usage, which is to kiss young ladies beneath. And there's nothing I like more, in fact, than singing, "Here we are, beneath the mistletoe, no young..."
Liz Fraser, why have you challenged?
Beneath twice.
2 beneaths give you an extra point, another point, and you take over the subject of mistletoe, and there are 36 seconds left, starting now.
I always thought that it would be the most romantic thing to be kissed underneath the mistletoe, and every year I would stand strategically placed under twice.
Derek Nimmo.
Hesitation.
Derek, I agree with the challenge of hesitation. You get another point, and there are 12 seconds left, mistletoe, starting now.
Once I spent Yuletide south of the equator, and there they had plastic mistletoe. And nothing more obscene have I ever seen. And if you...
Liz Fraser, why have you challenged?
Is seen, a verb
No,
twice?
you said obscene. I've seen.
Oh, I do beg your
It was
pardon.
well listened, but not correct. So Derek gets another point, and there are 3 seconds left for mistletoe, Derek, starting now.
Pucker up your lips, babe. I'm coming in on the down.
Kenneth, party games. Can you tell us something about party games? And there are 60 seconds to do it, starting now.
I think it was probably expressed most beautifully by Bernard Gascoigne when he wrote, "Here's a pencil and pad, you won't find it bad. These are games that we all of us know. Pass them on as you write them and ad infinitum. It's just party games. Make a good evening go." And even as he uttered those words to me for the first time, a tear began to form in my eye and drop to the floor below, where it ate its way through the floorboards. It was then at the time.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Floor and then floorboards. 2 floors.
Yes, alas, it was a pity.
Oh,
because
he's very fly, isn't he?
Yeah, it is it was a lovely story. So, Derek...
What a beautiful poem.
Yes, and what a beautiful teardrop right through to the floorboard. Anyway, Derek, I agree with the challenge. There are 19 seconds left for party games starting now.
My favourite party game is called Stuffing Your Christmas Bird. What you have to do is to get a large turkey and some stage and onion stuffing, and everybody gathers...
Liz Fraser, why have you challenged?
Stuffing twice.
Stuffing your
Yes,
Christmas bird,
right.
stuffing. That's quite correct, Liz. Well, listen. 14 seconds left for you, Liz. You take over the subject of party games starting now.
Are you...
Oh, Clement Froy, why have you challenged? Hesitation, not at all.
That was breath.
First time on the show, and there's you. Anyway, Liz, you have another point, and there are 13 seconds left for party games starting now.
I first met...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
No. Even less hesitation. There are 13 seconds left for party games, Liz, starting now.
I first met Clement Freud at a party, and he asked if I would participate in...
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree.
She dared let her get out what she was going to say you said. That's why, again.
I must say, she stuttered over the thought of what she was going to say.
Yes,
indeed. Oh, dear, what a pity. We may never know. Perhaps as well. Perhaps the series will continue. There are 7 seconds left with you, Clement Freud, to continue with party games starting now.
My favourite party game is getting Ebenezer Scrooge into a stocking filler.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
It's deviation. Getting Ebenezer Scrooge into a stocking is
It's impossible
not possible.
at this particular time
Yes.
because he does not exist. I give you a point and the subject, and there are 2.5 seconds left. Party games starting now.
We're supposed to take hold of your partner's hand and in her ear...
Well, at the end of that round, Kenneth was speaking once again, so he got the extra point. Liz Fraser crept up in the middle of that game and has now overtaken them, has 1 point lead over the other 3 at the end of that round. So it really is neck and neck. Liz, your turn to begin. The subject is carol singing. Would you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Good King Wenceslas stepped
Kenneth, why have you...
I've challenged because deviation, you should ask to talk about it and should proceed to sing about it.
Yeah, that's a...
And
You asked
carol
her to talk
singing.
about it.
Yes, it is a very good challenge, because I did say, actually, talk about it, and she started to demonstrate it.
Well, she's new.
What's that?
She's new.
She's new. So let me put it to the audience. Now, do you think, I say, will you talk about it? She was demonstrating it. If you agree with Kenneth's challenge, would you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? If you disagree with Kenneth, you're on the lady's side. She's new to the game, which seems very justified. So
You brainwashed all of them.
Liz gains a point and keeps the subject. There are 55 seconds left for carol singing, starting now.
When the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even brightly.
Kenneth, why are you challenged?
Well, all there's Anne, Chris, Anne, all there's Anne.
Well, technically, she was repeating herself, wasn't she? So I suppose, to be fair, what?
Oh, that is
No,
going to be a rule from now
give
on.
it to Kenneth.
And
I did
it's going
say
to be
and.
repetition.
No, I'm not going to charge any points. That's the fairest thing to do. I'm going to leave the subject with Liz Fraser, no points charged, because I'm not going to charge on Anne's. I think we've once before established that. 47 seconds left. Carol singing, Liz, starting now.
It is not generally known that I have the most exquisite voice with the range of...
Clement Freud challenged that time.
Hesitation.
Hesitation. I agree, Clement. You gain a point and the subject, and there are 42 seconds left. Carol singing, starting now.
When the mince pie is wheeled in on the trolley, we hold hands and sing carols, especially Carol. She...
Liz Fraser challenged. Why?
Well, I thought he said Carol
I
twice, but
know,
the first
but
one was actually
this
Carol's.
is what happens. He tries to be clever,
Yes.
and the first person in often gets stumped. So I disagree, because it was Carol's, and now it's a girl called Carol. Clement gets another point, and there are 33 seconds left for Carol singing, Clement, starting now.
The holly and the ivy and good and king and Wenceslas and many other lovely carols and...
Liz Fraser, why have you challenged?
Carol's.
Yes, well done. It wasn't for and.
Well done.
And there are 22 seconds left for Carol singing, Liz, starting now.
And because I have this marvellous voice, I am asked every Christmas time to go singing with the choirs which are going around the various districts in our area. And I go armed with a flask of gargle water and sing Once in Royal David's City, Silent Night, Good King Wenceslas.
Derek Nimmo challenged.
Repetition of Good King
Yes, because you sang that before.
Yes,
and
I
you're
did sing that
repeating it.
before.
So Derek
Quite
got
right.
in very clever just before the whistle. There's half a second to go. Carol singing. Starting now.
I have a lovely new violin.
The audience here all went, oh, but you see, it must be fair in the game, because Ian Messley hadn't actually blown the whistle, so Derek was in. And it's even more exciting, because we have 3 leaders all together, and Kenneth is behind the other 3 at the end of the
Well, as Herodotus said, what is good without my saying so.
Yeah. But you still have a chance to redress the balance, Kenneth. And the subject now is for Clement Freud. It's your turn to begin, Clement, and the subject is punch. And would you talk to us for 60 seconds, punch, starting now?
If you take equal quantities of cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg, and grate all these and dissolve it in a pint of water, adding a pound of sugar, you get the most excellent basis for a punch, especially if you allow this liquid to boil for an hour or more, and then strain it through a cloth into another vessel, adding to this wine whenever you feel like it, because the important thing about punch is the wine therein must not boil.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Repetition of wine.
Yes, we've had wine twice. So Derek gains a point and the subject.
I wanted to hear the
and
recipe.
there are 30 seconds left for punch, Derek, starting now.
In the middle of the Victorian era, a very different change came into comedy right in this country.
Clement Freud's challenge, why?
Hesitation.
I didn't notice a hesitation.
But didn't you? Hesitation?
No,
You must
no,
be the
no,
only one.
No, I didn't. There are 26 seconds for punch, Derek, starting now.
And a magazine came to be born which was called Punch, and had on the front of it the gentleman who performed with Judy.
Kenneth Williams got in first then. Hesitation, I agree then. So, Kenneth, you get a point, and there are 19 seconds left for punch, starting now.
I received one on my nose in a barrack room in Ceylon, and I remonstrated. I said, "Here, who do you think you're knocking about? What right have you?" He said, "Look at that," and showed me his arm, on which was 3 stripes, and I had none. And
Derek, would you begin the next round? And the subject is port, and there are 60 seconds for you to talk about it, starting now.
Well, one of the things I've never really gone along with is any port in a storm. It does seem to be rather a foolish thing to say. Because if one is in a tempest or a hurricane or a whirlwind and at sea, one would rather have...
Liz Fraser, why have you challenged?
One.
One.
No,
yeah,
not one.
No, not Anne's.
Not 1-1.
I don't think. No points scored. Leave the subject with Derek Nimmo, and there are 49 seconds left for port, Derek, starting now.
In my fifth, I'd write to...
Clement Freud challenge, why?
Hesitation.
Yes, hesitation. This is a sad thing that sometimes it's difficult to start again. Clement, I have to agree with a definite hesitation. You gain a point, and there are 47 seconds left for port, starting now.
Port is the name given to a fortified wine made in the Oporto Valley of Portugal, where it is drunk by the English gentry, who have for years and generations, centuries in fact, been the only people to involve
Liz
themselves.
Fraser, why have you challenged?
Hesitation?
No, he
No.
did keep going. He was
knowledgeable.
running down a little, but he kept going. So, Clement, as I disagree with the challenge, you gain another point, and there are 30 seconds left for port, starting now.
It is traditional at smart dinner parties for the ladies to leave the gentlemen, and the males of the species thereafter to consume port, while their female counterparts are outside.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
because you don't, it's deviation, you don't consume port, you drink it. You consume. That is the act of eating, you see. You don't eat a drink. No, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. I'm not having it.
You're not having it. You tried very hard, but I mean, if you've drunk something or eaten it, it has been consumed, surely.
Oh.
So, I'm afraid to be fair to the game, I have to disagree with the challenge, leave it with Clement Freud, and say there are 18 seconds left for port. Clement, starting now.
On board ship, port is the left-hand side, where starboard is the right. And many a sailor has gone to the wrong place simply because of a failure to acquaint himself with this simple form of direction. While drinking liquid...
Afraid that we have no more time, so that is the end of this week's contest, if you can call it that, because we like to call it a game. And I must point out right away that Derek's last challenge wouldn't have made any difference to the final result. It's a very fair one, a very interesting one, because equal in second place we had our guest for this week, first time, very good, Liz Fraser. But by a couple of points only, we have the winner once again this week, Clement Freud. Hope that you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute. All of us here would like to wish you, listening, a very, very happy Christmas. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Catherine Whitehorn in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And it's my pleasure in this particular show to welcome for the first time to try and do battle with these three clever players of the game, Catherine Whitehorn. And once again, the rules are as before. I'm going to ask them each to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do this, they will, of course, gain points or give them away to whoever may be challenging. That is the way we play, and let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Panache. Can you talk to us for 60 seconds on panache, starting now?
It's extremely fortunate that you've asked me to discuss this, because nobody in this world is more appropriate. It is, of course, derived from tuft of feathers, originally worn on the plume of the helmet. Now...
Catherine Whitehorn, you have challenged. Why?
Plume and feathers mean the same thing. I think that counts as repetition.
No, actually, Catherine... Actually, Catherine, I must explain, we only grant...
Oh, she's most aggressive, isn't she?
Well, she has already been warned before we started how aggressive all you three are, so she's starting right in with the right way. Catherine, I think we only give repetition when it's a repetition of the word, but it's a very good try, and as you're new to the game, I'm going to give her a point for that jolly good challenge, but leave the subject with Kenneth and say there are 43 seconds left for panache, Kenneth, starting now.
In the sense of linguistics, nowadays it is taken to mean that which is done with a flourish, so to speak, or with nicety, great style, which of course all I do indulge, all of this.
Clement Freud, you have challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I quite agree.
It's most unfair, isn't it?
It's not a bit of a... You couldn't describe your style. It was beyond words, Kenneth. I quite understand. Clement, I agree with your challenge, so you take the subject, and there are 24 seconds left for panache, starting now.
The culinary connotations of this word give it an accent aigu, making it panaché and meaning mixed, as in salade panaché.
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged
Tradition
one.
of panache, which is not the word on the card.
Yes, it's panache on the card and not panaché. I give Derek the point and the subject, and there are 13 seconds left for panache, starting now.
How wonderful it must have been with Henry VIII on the field
Clement
of the
Freud, why did
Plaza.
you challenge?
Repetition of must.
Yes, that's true.
All right, if you're going to be as tough as that, see how much tougher you can get. It's absolutely correct, though I think a little unfair. So I must be correct within the rules of the game. Clement, you have another point. You take the subject back, and there are 11 seconds left for panache, starting now.
A panache of salad, 2
Derek Nimmo, wife who challenged.
Addition of salad.
You didn't.
Yes,
You did say
I said it
salad
earlier
before.
on.
All right. They're getting
And
red.
I said as well.
But he's not going to get 2 points for that. So there are 8 seconds left for you, Derek, to continue with panache, starting now.
As I walk down the Strand, flourishing my shillelagh, people look at me.
Clement, Kenneth Williams, who challenged.
Yes, repetition, we've just had flourish.
Not with me, you haven't.
You haven't had
well,
flourish.
it's in the same context, so
It
you can't
doesn't
keep on.
matter, no. You haven't had a flourish from Derek before. So Derek keeps the subject because he gains a point because I disagree with the challenge. There are 5 seconds left for panache, Derek, starting now.
People shout at me on the street and say, you have nearly as much panache as Kenneth Williams. And I say, what hell, thank you so much.
For those of you who may not know, the whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Derek Nimmo who has gained a commanding lead at the end of that round. In fact, the first round of any show, I've never seen so many points scored. So let us continue. In quieter vein, I hope. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject is curing ham. Will you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
In order to cure ham, you've got to have a really thick piece of pork, which is smoked. And it makes no difference whether it has mildew, blue fly, or green deposits all over it. The important thing is to get it better. And ideally, curing it is achieved by getting malt vinegar and hydrochloric acid and scrubbing away until every last trace.
Catherine White, and wife who challenged.
Simply because it's beginning to make me feel sick. You can have me go on if you want.
Well, I'm afraid that even if someone makes you sick on the show, if they haven't deviated or done any of the other crimes, I cannot award it to you, Catherine.
Being sick would be deviating, wouldn't it?
If you were sick, yes.
And for the record.
Yes.
I was trying to explain to
But no, I'm afraid that it's he wasn't deviating from the subject, even though he
Well,
made
at
you
least
feel
I've
sick.
given us a respite, haven't I?
Yes, and we've heard from you again, which is lovely, Catherine. So, Clement gets another point, and there are 32 seconds left for curing ham, starting now.
There are many people who think that this applies to ham which is salted and put away over smoke until such time as it may be eaten and served either as gammon or bacon. And there are in Bradenham, also in Wiltshire and in Yorkshire, companies that specialize particularly in this form of delicacy. I once knew one which had scarlet fever, which...
Kenneth Williams, why? You challenge.
Deviation, you can't know a ham.
Clement Freud looked directly at you then. I know some hams. I've acted with some of them as well.
Disgusting.
So in that sense, if you'd had a ham couldn't have scarlet fever, I would agree, that is devious. But you challenge for knowing a ham. And you can technically, because that's the phrase you use in the theatre. So it is not deviation, I'm afraid. Clement Freud gets another point. 4 seconds left. Curing ham, Clement, starting now.
who worked at the Old Vic every Tuesday and Thursday in matinees.
On this occasion, Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, so he has jumped into the lead now at the end of the second round, and Catherine Whitehorn and Kenneth Williams are trailing a little behind. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject is dogs I know well. Can you tell us something about the dogs you know well in 60 seconds, Derek, starting
One
now?
pair of dogs that I know particularly well are made of brass and a rather lovely Adam design. I keep them in my fireplace and rest logs on them in the winter time, particularly at Yuletide, and they give off the most wonderful glow, and I think how pretty they are. I also had a Pekingese, which was given to me by my great aunt Sarah, which I liked very much indeed. Also, I remember...
Kenneth Williams is challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Well, you know, it was almost hesitation, but I think it was such a brilliant twist from saying very, very that I don't think we could allow, because it was so beautifully done with such panache that I don't think we could allow that one. It was very close, so I disagree with the challenge. Derek gets a point, and there are 38 seconds left for dogs I know well, Derek, starting now.
A Yorkshire Terrier that ran aground on...
Clement Freud's challenge.
Hesitation?
No hesitation at all. He was keeping going all right. 31 seconds left for you, Derek. Having gained another point, dogs I know well, starting now.
Particularly in the latest, I saw a wonderful great pack of hounds leaping across the turf.
Kenneth Williams, why did you challenge?
Deviation, such as dogs he knows well, and we've gone through brass ones, Pekingese ones, Yorkshire Terriers, and now he's come to a pack of hounds.
Yes,
you wouldn't be well acquainted with a pack.
No, I quite agree, Kenneth.
I think it's just going a bit far, dear.
I agree with your challenge. I don't believe that Derek could be well acquainted with a whole pack of hounds. So, Kenneth, you gain a point. In fact, it's your first point. Well done. And there are 26 seconds left for dogs I know well, starting now.
In Morocco, I met the most beautiful dog called Brandy. He fell in love with me at first sight, and...
Catherine Whitehall, why have you challenged?
Deviation on the part of the dog.
What's she mean? What's she mean? Come on, Nick, what's she saying?
She means that the dog had absolutely supreme taste.
Oh, that's all right.
Yes. She was calling into question your taste, but not the dog's.
Oh, I see.
In other words, the dog thought you were super, but you were not deviating. I'm going to give Catherine a point for that. She gets all her points for these rather brilliant challenges. But I'm afraid he wasn't deviating, strictly speaking, from the subject on the card. So we're still with you, Kenneth, and there are 16 seconds left for dogs I know well, starting now.
My friend said put your face right next to his, and with my camera, I will record this loving couple. Surely no finer example in life exists than man with his friend, the dog. Man's natural friend. What happened there? I want to keep going. That gentleman's furious. Look at his face, gone white.
I think a lot of people are going to be very furious, but I must be fair. Actually, Clement's buzzer did go before the whistle.
What on behalf of?
What was it, Clement?
Repetition of man.
You did repeat man, you know.
Oh, well, he gets it, does he?
I'm afraid he does. I've got to be fair, you
it
know.
did.
It was clever, but there we are. He managed it. And literally, there's only half a second left for dogs I know well, Clement, starting now. So very artfully getting in just before the whistle once again, Clement Froy gets an extra point. He's increased his lead over Derek Nemo at the end of that round. Catherine, your turn to begin. Would you like to talk to us about dieting? For 60 seconds, starting now.
Dieting is a subject which every woman journalist has to write about at least twice a year. And the great thing that needs to be known about dieting is those foods which are not fattening. These are particularly food eaten when nobody sees you eating it, food stolen off other people's plates, especially when they don't see you doing it, food that has, for some reason or another, been left on the side of somebody else's plate, and anything that is left in the dish in the dining room is always known to be not fattening and so constitutes a diet within the meaning of the act. There are other diets which I have followed with greater or lesser success. I've tried dieting by eating nothing except bananas. I've tried dieting by eating nothing except whiskey, and I can't say that one really worked. I can only say that the next diet that I shall try, the diet...
Ladies and gentlemen, I have often accused our three male players of being ungallant. But you couldn't say they were ungallant. I think we had food about 6 or 7 times, eating 4 or 5 times, and well, dieting is the subject on the card. But no, it was lovely. We loved hearing it. The audience adored it, Catherine. You did it beautifully. You've spoken for the first time, but you gained some confidence, and even better, I'm sure. Point for the whistle, but you get an extra point for going without being interrupted. So you've now jumped forward.
What position is she in?
She's still in 3rd place with you.
Haven't just scored 3?
No, she's a little ahead.
There's some juggery pokery. What's going on? What are you doing?
Exactly. Come have a look. Clement Freud.
Get nothing.
Clement Freud is still in the lead. He's 2 points ahead of Derek Nimmo. Catherine Whitehorn is now in third place, and you're just a little way behind her now. So, Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. And
Thank goodness for that. I think I've really heard of
and a
them.
very apt subject again at this particular moment, sauce. Can you talk to us about sauce, Kenneth, for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I suppose most people think of it as flavouring, something to be added to their food. Other people think of it as impertinence.
Derek Nimmo, why did you challenge?
Repetition of people.
Yes, we've had more than other people.
Oh, how true. How very
How ridiculous you are sometimes. Derek, you gained the subject and, of course, another point, and there are 51 seconds left for sauce, starting now.
I often like a lovely sauce on my gander, don't you?
Ken Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation sauce can be piquant, it can be nutritious, it can be anything, but it can't be lovely. Loveliness is not a quality.
I disagree.
Life.
I think you can have a lovely sauce.
No, do you know what loveliness means, dear?
Yes, I know. It means to love. I know all about that.
Well, it's nothing to do with sauce.
No, but colloquially, some people sometimes say that
We're
sauce
not
was
here
lovely.
concerned with look
We
here.
are, because that's how we speak colloquially. And when you have to keep going for 60 seconds, when there are people like you trying to challenge, it's very difficult to find exactly the right adjective. So he colloquially was not deviating from the subject. Derek Nimmo gets another point, and he keeps sauce. And there are 47 seconds left, Derek, starting now.
One of the troubles with Kenneth Williams is he's always giving the chairman of...
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation of subject sauce, not Kenneth Williams.
I think he was going to say one of the troubles with Kenneth Williams is the sauce that he gives, but I'm going to put it to the audience because Kenneth made a good challenge, and obviously Derek was going to get in the word sauce. He wasn't deviating, but if you think that Kenneth's challenge was justified, will you cheer? And if you think it wasn't, will you boo? And you'll all do it together now. I think it was an unjustified challenge without any doubts.
You should never have asked them. They're a load of idiots. All being got here under false pretense.
I
Probably
believe
come
you-
in for nothing. They're all coming for nothing.
Kenneth,
I
Kenneth, I believe your mother's sitting in the audience.
Yes, and I shall leave the stage. I shall give more respect. I should be given respect, shouldn't I?
Yes, well, all right. Anyway, you didn't. The audience made their decision, and they have said that Derek Nimmo not only keeps the subject, gains a point, and the subject is sauce, Derek, and there are 44 seconds left, starting now.
I like sauce on my Christmas pudding. My Aunt Beatrice, who lives in Blas Hughes Avenue in Prestatyn, North Wales, makes quite the finest sauce that I've ever tasted. She puts a lot of brandy into it, and when it goes on top of the old pud, she sets fire to it, and the pyrotechnics have to be seen to believe, and people come from miles around to warm their hands around this lovely sauce, and they say, good old... Who's buzzing?
Clement Freud.
You can't come from miles around Prestatyn because it's a seaside town.
Well, yes, I think we must give him that one, mustn't we? It's only fair. So well done, Clement. You gain a point and the subject, and there are 22 seconds left for sauce, starting now.
If you take English mustard, port wine, and red currant jelly, and melt all three substances in a saucepan, you achieve something called Cumberland sauce, which is one of the great classic sauces of this country. It has been said that France has 123 cheeses, and we have one sauce.
Well, we've certainly got plenty of sauce in that round, and Clement Freud was again speaking when the whistle went, so he now has a lead still over Derek Nimmo, but it's only a lead of one, and the other two are still trailing a little. Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin. The subject is electricity. Can you talk to us about electricity for 60 seconds, starting now?
Electricity is what leaks out of the socket when you remove the bulb. And often have I come into houses which have been fired with this substance to the point of 30, 40, even 60 volts. I've opened the door and someone has said, be careful, electricity is around.
Catherine White, on your
He
challenge.
said,
Hesitation.
It was a hesitation,
Yes.
yes. You say hesitation. I'm not it's easier. Well, you definitely hesitated.
All right, I'll
yes.
say hesitation, but he said,
Absolutely right, and you gain the subject at the point, of course, and there are 38 seconds left for electricity, starting now.
I entirely share the fear.
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yeah, I disagree. And Catherine has yet to get into her stride in this game, so she keeps the subject, having gained another point, and there are 37 seconds left for electricity, Catherine, starting now.
I entirely share the...
Clement Freud, you have challenged again.
Didn't think she got into her stride properly.
So you're giving her another point.
Oh.
It's at your own expense, you know. So Catherine has another point, and there are 36 seconds left for electricity starting now.
I entirely share the fear of electricity that was expressed in Clement Freud's story. I think that I feel the same way about it.
Clement Freud, you challenge.
She said,
So?
Hesitation.
Yes, all right. There are people who write in about these things, you know, unless we get absolutely clear. Hesitation, Clement, and there are 30 seconds left for you on electricity starting now.
On many a wall, there's something called a plug, from which this electric...
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, hesitation, Derek, taking over the subject, and 24 seconds left, starting now.
When you go round Piccadilly Circus, one of the things that really strikes you is the amount of electricity that's employed there to light up the great vista that you look at. And people come there, even from Prestatyn, to look at it, because they know that there are the signs of without parallel in the whole of the British Isles. And I do agree with them. And I think it's a tremendous shame that the people of that lovely liquid that they make over in Dublin have taken down their clock, because that was one of my happier childhood memories.
Last electric performance by Derek Nimmo gained him an extra point because he was speaking when the whistle went, and he's now equal in the lead alongside Clement Freud. Derek, your turn to begin. The subject is custard pies. I don't know why that makes them laugh so much, unless they imagine one on your face or something. But can you talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
They always say that in France there are 257 cheeses, but in England there's only one custard pie. I quite agree with them, because this is the sort of thing that any gastronomic pundit loves to give out, whether it is true or not. But I always like to devour this particular delicacy. If you go along...
Catherine Whitehall,
It's not a delicacy.
Well, I suppose it's the way you look at it, you see.
Well, if it depends on looking at it, that proves my point, doesn't it?
Yes, I think in most people it is not considered a delicacy, and there are 42 seconds left for you with custard pies starting now.
The great thing about custard pies is to distinguish between an eating pie and a throwing pie.
Derek Nimmer's challenge.
The subject is pies, not pies. A repetition because she said pie twice.
Yes, it is custard pies. It says a throwing pie and an eating pie, so I think that's legitimate.
That makes two pies in all, doesn't it?
Yes, that's a good point, isn't it?
That's the subject.
Yes, all right. We'll leave it with you, Catherine Whitehorn. You have another point. And there are 36 seconds left for custard pies, starting now.
You make them with entirely different things according to which you wish to do with them.
Clement Freud.
The two witches.
No, which you wish.
I sounded from here as if you were saying exactly the same thing twice.
Well, actually, Clement,
I think it's all too awful. It's so rude. I mean, this lady here coming here for the first time. You're taking a rise like that.
Actually, Clement, if you'd had it for hesitation, which it sounded like to me, I would have agreed.
Yes,
As she
exactly. I
said
was going to
which
say
and
that.
which. Therefore, I disagree with the challenge because it was not deviation. Yes. So Catherine gets another point, and there are 32 seconds left for custard pies, Catherine, starting now.
If you want
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Oh, well, it's not much good, is it, really? But I was going to say hesitation, but I realised she hadn't got into her stride. So
I think it would be fair to say she has got into her stride now. She's well and truly in her stride and doing extraordinarily well. So it was a hesitation. She didn't get going in time. So, Derek, you get a point. You take the subject back. 30 seconds left for custard pies, starting now.
when he picks one up and he throws it up in the air and it lands in his own face. And I always laugh at that, don't you? I do think that you go along to the playroom and that little fellow's found with a little hat and baggy trousers.
Catherine Whitehorn.
little twice.
Yes, a little twice.
Oh, yes,
well, listen,
absolutely.
Catherine, you have another point.
Well, jolly
And you
good.
Take over the subject.
Riding away now.
Really in her stride, isn't she? There we go.
Really in her stride.
Custard pies is back with you, Catherine, and there are 18 seconds left, starting now.
The point.
Catherine, you must come in.
Yes, I'm afraid it was. I've got to be firm with you now because you were in the lead for a second. You've lost it. So, Clement, I agree with the challenge. You take over the subject, custard pies, and there are 17 seconds left, starting now.
It's absolutely essential to use pastry for this, although it matters not.
Kenneth Williams, why is it...
Deviation. We've already had him on culinary effects for the rest of the after programme, and we don't want to start another load of stuff out of it.
So why are you
What happened and
challenging?
How much lectures that he's leaking out of his tube.
Leaking out of his tube?
That's what he went on about, it leaking out, he said. Load of rubbish.
I know that was. I don't know why I wasn't challenged on that. Because
I meant to challenge him at the time, Nick, but I was carried away.
You were throbbing, in other words. Yes. Well, what are you challenging about now?
It was boring, I thought.
I'm afraid in this game he can be as boring as he likes, as long as he keeps going and doesn't hesitate, repeat, or deviate. It doesn't matter. So he gains another point, because I can't agree with the challenge. And there are 14 seconds left for custard pies, Clement, starting now.
One of the best things about custard pies is that it doesn't make you repeat, unlike radishes, which have often been said to have this quality. You use eggs and milk and sugar, and you bake blind in an oven. Flour.
So, Clement, speaking again, when the whistle went at the end of that round, increased his lead. And I see it, I'm afraid it is time for us to finish, because we have no more time. So let me give you the final score. Kenneth Williams, unlike him, trailed a little this week in 4th place. Catherine Whitehorn, for the first time, did extraordinarily well, because she came a very good 3rd. Only 2 points behind Derek Nimmo, who was 3 points behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. That's all we have time for. We do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Prunella Scales in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And I'm pleased to welcome back to the show, most courageously, Prunella Scales. She's come once again to try and pit her wits against these 3 devastating and passionate players. And the silent players of the game. Anyway, well, good luck, Prunella. I'm sure you're going to do jolly well. And once again, I'm going to ask them each to speak on some unlikely subject if they can, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do it, they will gain points. And of course, they're challenged, and I agree with the challenge, they will not gain points. That is how we play, that is how we score. And Clement Freud, will you begin? And can you start this week on astronomy? 60 seconds now.
Ideally, to study and practice astronomy, you need a dark...
Kenneth Williams, you've challenged very rapidly. Why?
A deviation. You cannot ideally study anything, let alone astronomy. It's rubbish.
Well, you know, I think you ideally can do something. I mean,
well,
it's
you wouldn't be a
according
human
to
being, would you? Would you? Because you'd be ideal. No human being is. So rubbish.
I know, but it's according to your... It's according to your interpretation of the word. And some people's feelings may be that what they're doing is an ideal way of doing something. And so I disagree with the challenge, so Clement Freud ends it, and he keeps the subject of astronomy. 55 seconds left, starting now.
A dark night, and many is the occasion on which I have nudged the housekeeper and taken out my telescope and said, "Oh ho, there is Saturn."
I wish I hadn't. I thought he said oh, but he didn't. He said oh ho.
He said ho ho, didn't you?
Repetition. I was against it, but I wasn't.
Oh ho, he was being very clever, setting himself up for as a target, and, well, what did you say, actually, Clement?
Oh ho.
Oh, yes.
Quite distinctly, without any ulterior motive.
Actually, the chairman did think as I did, you see.
I did.
No, it comes into the song. Oh ho, his nose doth show how off the blackjack to his lips doth go.
Yeah. That's right. I don't
But I
think...
suppose we better get on, hadn't we?
Yes, but we enjoyed it anyway. Clement, you keep the subject. 47 seconds left for astronomy, starting now.
There is the plough, say I. It's the plough, responds the woman. No, no.
Derek, you challenge.
I suspect it wasn't yo-ho this time.
Your suspicions are correct. It was absolutely correct. So, 2 no's gain you a point, Derek. You take over the subject, and there are 40 seconds left. Astronomy starting now.
My favourite place to study astronomy is standing on top of the Wallace Memorial outside Stirling. There I look up into the night at Orion's belt. 3 beautiful stars gleaming, and I know that only the fiery smoke of 1,000 years that came before the birth of time.
Prunella Scales, you have challenged.
Deviation, it's a science. He's getting all romantic about it.
He's getting romantic, but you said romance and a science.
Astronomy is a science. You
Yes,
can't
I
talk
know.
about a science like that.
Oh, I think you can be romantic about anything, really, Prunella. It was jolly well tried, but I'm afraid I do feel that he wasn't, strictly speaking, deviating from astronomy. So however romantic he wants to get about it. So he gains another point, and there are 8 seconds left. Astronomy, Derek, starting now.
One has a rather jolly shape like a pan, and I always liked looking at that one when I was 7.5. My mummy used to show it to me and say...
Just to remind you that that whistle, which is so beautifully blown by Ian Messiter, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Derek Nimmo, who has a lead of 1 over Clement Freud at the end of the first round. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? Something that you've given plenty of in this particular game. Passion. So can you give us some more passion, or at least talk about passion, for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, as Saint Simeon passionately declared, all that we know of a man is his reputation, and as to his character, madam, only the all-knowing can be aware of that. How true this is, and with what motivation this so thrills the human frame that you might define the entire feeling as passion, and I possess it to a degree of intensity. Even now, I'm throbbing with it. People have actually said, look at him, farsighting. He's passionate.
Prunella Scales, you challenge why?
Repetition, he's going, he is.
Yes, he is. It was very...
No, I said he is going, he is.
oh,
That's not repetition, that's he is 1 minute, and it's he is the next.
Oh, let the audience be the judge. They're absolutely fair, always the audience are.
Don't ask them!
I am going to ask them.
No,
Because
you're quite right.
you
You're
have
the
made
chairman. We will abide. We will abide by your decision, my friend.
No, you have challenged my decision, so therefore, ladies and gentlemen, if you agree with Prunella's challenge, will you cheer, and if you disagree, will you boo, and you all do it together now? Justified. All right, so the audience have decided it, and there are 14 seconds left for you, Prunella, on passion, starting now.
Passion is totally foreign to the English mentality. The French understand it.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Well, it's not foreign to my mentality. There's deviation.
Well, I'm inclined to agree. It is not foreign to the English mentality. They may be less passionate than some races, but it's not.
Well, she's
foreign.
speaking in a general sense, and she's quite right. We're not as passionate.
You just said you were throbbing with it.
Yes.
Oh, but I am not English, my darling.
Welsh.
I am Welsh, you
He's
see.
Welsh.
Cymru Sydd, Cymru Fydd, Cymru and Byth, you see.
Anyway, I agree with Derek's challenge, and he takes the subject of passion. There are 9 seconds left, Derek, starting now.
I have tremendous passion for butterfly collecting, and I go out with a lovely net on green meadows.
Prunella Scales, why have you
This is
challenged?
exactly what I meant. He can have a passion for butterfly collecting.
Yes.
But this is what I meant about it being foreign to the English temperament.
I don't think you established that.
Deviation to have
No,
a
I
passion
mean, you
for
can have-
butterfly collecting.
But yes, well, I mean, it is still passion. That is the subject on the card. He's not, strictly speaking, deviated from it, however much you think it may be devious to have a passion for butterflies. So the passion is still with you, Derek, and there are 3 seconds left, starting now.
I have a passion for nubile women with big thighs, and I...
So Prunella, can I ask you, did Derek's last thought...
Oh, yes,
carry-
that was exactly what I meant.
Oh, good. Well, there we are. But Derek has increased his lead at the end of that round over all the others. And Prunella, it's your turn to begin. The subject is why I want to play Lady Macbeth. I don't know whether you have ever felt you wanted to play it, but anyway, can you talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
I have never played Lady Macbeth, but I've always wanted to because I think I'm absolutely ideal casting for it. When I was very young, I was convinced that I would grow up tall and dark and gaunt and ecstatically beautiful. I also thought I would grow up to be a man, but that didn't happen either.
Derek Nimmer's challenge, why?
Repetition of grow up.
Yes,
yes.
that is right. So, Derek, you gain a point and you take over this subject. Why I want to play Lady Macbeth. Can you tell us why? And there are 44 seconds left, starting now.
I want to play Lady Macbeth because when I was a child, I always thought that I would grow up to be gaunt and beautiful. And
Kenneth Williams, right?
We've had all this before, we don't need to.
But I'm afraid you haven't had it from Derek. So therefore he gains another point for that. So he can say it for the first time. 37 seconds left, Derek. Why I want to play Lady Macbeth starting now.
it would be absolutely lovely to romp around. There's great long roads with blood all over your hands.
Deviation, nobody ever played Lady Macbeth would romp around.
You haven't seen some of the people who played Lady Macbeth.
She's not a romper.
You can't, in any sense.
A thunderer, but not a romper.
All right. I know. From the subject. No, you're well in the lead. I quit. It's a questionable point of whether you're deviating from the subject or not. But I think there is some justification for the challenge, so I give it to you, Kenneth.
Thank you.
And there are 34 seconds left for why I want to play Lady Macbeth, starting now.
Why I want to play Lady Macbeth is because that's what Shakespeare wrote it for in the beginning. Ah, boy, and what more lovely specimen than what you see before you now. If I got up on the stage...
Deviation.
Why?
Well, he's not a boy, he's a dirty old man.
Audience obviously disagrees, despite how young you look. They entirely disagree with Derek's challenge. But obviously... Well, all right, I tell you what, we'll put it to the audience. Do you agree with Derek's challenge, ladies and gentlemen? If you do, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And you all do it together now. An absolute draw, so there we are. Kenneth keeps the subject, no points scored, and there are 21 seconds left for why I want to play Lady Macbeth, Kenneth, starting now.
And because I would say most beautifully, and Duncan's guards will I with wassail.
Prunella Scales, wife of challenge.
Hesitation.
What are you talking about?
Not quite. He got very close to it. I didn't quite know what he was talking about, but it was hesitation. So Kenneth gets a point, and there are 17 seconds left for why I want to play Lady Macbeth, starting now.
And memory, the ward of the brain, shall be a fume, and the receipt of reason a limbeck only. Ah, what dialogue is there for a fine entertainment?
Were you quoting from Macbeth?
Yes, she says, Duncan's guards lie with wine and wassail, so convinced that memory, the water of the brain, shall be a fume, and the receipt of reason a limbeck only.
If you'd said it like that, we would have understood. There we are. So, Lady Macbeth gives you some points, Kenneth, and you have jumped ahead of Clement Freud at the end of that round. Clement, will you begin the next round? The subject is smoking in the kitchen. Yes, that makes you think, doesn't it? But can you talk to us about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
When you see smoking in the kitchen, it's fairly obvious that something is burning. And depending on what you have, what saucepans are on the stove, what joints are in the oven...
Derek Nimmer, wife who challenge.
Repetition of what?
What sauce? What? Yes, but it's a bit unfair, isn't it? What?
Well,
Well, I know, but if you challenge, I must be fair. It is quite correct. So, therefore, Derek, you take over the subject with another point, and there are 47 seconds left for smoking in the kitchen, starting now.
Smoking in the kitchen is particularly pleasant if you're lying on the floor with a large cigarette holder in your hand.
Clement Freud, wife who challenge.
Repetition of in.
All right, then I'm going to give it back to Clement, and we're not going to start challenging any more after this on these small words, because otherwise the game will run to a grinding halt. So, Clement, you get the subject back, and there are 42 seconds left for smoking in the kitchen, starting now.
In what kitchen can you smoke? You may well ask. What The heavens name.
Derek Nimmo, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation. Utterly deserved. Having been generous to him and given him the subject back, he thought he'd be very clever and try and get in as many whats and ins and ands as he could, and he hesitated. So, Derek, you get a point. The subject back, 33 seconds left. Smoking in the kitchen starting now.
Smoking in the kitchen I see. Call for the fire brigade, I shout. And the brigade arrives. In come my splendid men in their lovely uniforms with their big choppers in their hands. They smash down the door, open everything up to the wide world, and squirt away with their hoses. Water goes right over the flames, and everything begins to subside and drop gently down until once more that lovely place where the food is cooked is cool and dry again. And everyone is happy.
Well, Derek was speaking once again when the whistle went, so he gains a further point, increasing his lead at the end. In fact, he's now way out in the lead, and the other three are almost equal in second place. And by the way, there's a lovely sort of devious thought you had there, Derek. You said they came in and then they broke the door down. But obviously,
Yes, my goodness, you're quite right, Nick.
Derek, it's your turn
Good
to
thing
begin
they're not
again.
all as sharp as you.
It's a good thing we're not all as sarcastic as you, Derek, isn't it? Reading under the bedclothes is the subject that Ian Mester's thought for you, Derek, so can you talk to us about it starting now?
Well, the particular kind of bedclothes that I like to read under are an accumulation of nighties. I hang them up above my head, and then I snuggle down below them with a tiny lighted candle and a book.
Kenneth and his wife were challenged.
Deviation, he wouldn't be under there with a lighted candle, he would burn himself to death.
Yeah, you see, the awful thing is that probably you're absolutely correct in that sense. If he burned himself to death, it he couldn't be reading under the bedclothes. But in talking about it, he's not actually deviating from the subject on the card.
He's getting to smoking in the kitchen.
So, while it's pretty close, I'm afraid I must be accurate about the subject on the card, which is reading under the bedclothes, which he was describing. And there are 45 seconds left for you, Derek, starting now.
Another variety of this particular pastime, of course, can be obtained if you get into your actual bed with sheets and blankets and perhaps an eiderdown above you and an electric torch in your hand. And there you can open a copy of Samuel P.
Kenneth Williams, your chap.
Yes, hesitation.
Hesitation, I quite agree. Yes, he wasn't sure what he was going to open out of this bedclothes, was he? Kenneth, you have the subject and you have...
What is the subject? What is it?
Oh, I'm just about to give it to you. 29 seconds first, though. Reading under the bedclothes, starting now.
Well, this isn't something I do very often, but I recall one occasion down at where I was particularly frightened. And I was frightened.
Clement Freud challenge.
A repetition of frightened.
You see it beautifully, Clement. So you take over the subject, and there are 18 seconds left. Reading under the bedclothes, starting now.
Of course, you have to have bedclothes and a book. Otherwise, the whole idea of this pastime is...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Deviation has already been established. It's just going to go around all these bedclothes we've gone through until they're all rotten with...
I haven't seen Clement Freud's bedclothes. No, he hasn't had the subject before, and he's starting again talking about the bedclothes and the other necessary things to have for reading. So I'm afraid he wasn't deviating from the subject. He keeps it. There are 13 seconds left, starting now.
1001 Nights would be a very suitable volume for reading under the...
Derek Nimmo, why have you
Sorry,
challenged?
my mistake. Just give him a point. Reading, but the reading is part of the card. Repetition, I was going to say repetition of reading, but reading is part of the card.
You've taken your challenge back. I've never quite established if someone challenged it incorrectly, whether the person gets a point. I suppose he should, strictly speaking. So Clement gets another point, and there are 8 seconds left for reading under the bedclothes, starting now.
The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Well, he recites this wretched poem on every programme. I mean, nothing could be more repetitive. The chief defects of Henry King. Every time we get anything, he doesn't know what to say. He fills in the gap. It's not in 1001 Nights. The only poem, you know. It's very boring. It was pretty boring 3 years ago.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Prunella, you haven't said anything. Would you like to say something as well? They've all had about Henry King. Anything at all you feel about it? No, you would. I'm so sorry. So anyway, the thing is, all you've done now, you know, Derek, is the fact you've drawn Clement's attention to bring it out. He'll bring it out even more. He'll bring it into smoking in the kitchen and everything. What were you challenging for after your long
The
dissertation?
repetition of the chief of England, War Henry King.
Yes. But he could read that under his bedclothes, so it's not strictly speaking deviating from the subject on the card. So he has another point, and there are 4 seconds left, starting now.
God made the evil grocer as a portent and a sign.
Kenneth Williams, wife of
Oh, it's nothing to do with reading under. He's just doing these quotes. It's nothing to do with reading.
This is,
under
as
the
I
bed.
understand it, what he was reading under the bedclothes. So he has one other point, 1 second left, starting.
He did say he's reading 1001 Nights, didn't he?
No.
Well, he might have a lot of books under the bedclothes.
The library.
Are you challenged? Why?
He misquoted.
What did he
It's
misquote?
God made the wicked grocer for a mystery and sign.
There's a Daniel, the judgment of and the country's free again, isn't it? It's a free country, and she got up and she affirmed her freedom at the time.
He can't be misquoting, can he?
Exactly.
Chaps, I must point out, some of the audience are leaving. I think.
All right, then leave. I hope your train goes before.
I must point out to the listeners that somebody really has left. We hope it's for a train. And
no, she's livid.
Brunella's got a point, and there's 1 second left for you, Brunella, with reading under the bedclothes, starting now.
One of the reasons I'm not...
Well, Brunella scales to speak then with the whistle wencher. She gains very rapidly 2 points there, and she's now still in 3rd place behind Clement Freud, and Derek's still very definitely the leader. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? My fancy. Can you tell us what your fancy?
They've chosen stinking subjects to me, haven't they?
I'm inclined to agree. You've had some stinking subjects this week. So anyway, now we'd like you to talk about my fancy, starting now.
My fancy is this particular poem, which runs white as a white sail on a dusky sea, when half the horizon's clouded and half free, fluttering between... Oh, I said half free.
Keep going, even if you do. They might even be generous, even if they notice it.
Yeah, not with these faces round here.
Clement's challenge came first.
The repetition of white.
Yes, indeed. He's gone right back to when you said white, right at the beginning.
Sorry.
So, there are 46 seconds left for you, Clement. My fancy starting now.
My fancy is Prunella Scales, of the rumbustious breast, the lugubrious...
I'm not coming here to listen to a load of filth. It's a family show, isn't it? But look at how she's gone white. And yes, and somebody else has already left. And
also, her husband is sitting in the audience as well.
yes, her husband's sitting in the audience.
So I agree with Kenneth Williams' challenge. We'll get straight on with the
How would you
game.
describe it?
I'm not going to be drawn
This is
any
the game.
further. And say there are 40 seconds left for Kenneth Williams on My Fancy, starting now.
My fancy is generally for precision and neatness. I have been referred to as compact. And I think you will all agree that that verdict is not mispronounced. And Linda, give the wee green man a bowl of milk. That's my fancy this week. And I'll put 2 bob each way on Lady Bluebell. And hope to win the national sweepstake at some future date. But then, of course, my fancy could go for Angelica and silver balls on top of icing.
All I can say, Kenneth, is fancy that. But your fancy managed to bring you well back from the 4th position to a very definite 3rd position, but still Derek Nemo's in the lead. Prunella, will you begin the next round? The subject is magic. Can you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
After a particularly virulent row last week with my husband, he said, "Darling, where's the magic?" And I realized...
Derek Nemo, wife who challenged.
Hesitation.
I beg your pardon?
Hesitation.
I disagree.
Sorry.
Prunella has another point, and there are 57 seconds left for Magic Prunella, starting now.
And I realized that indeed I hadn't...
Derek, Nimmer, you challenge.
Repetition of realize.
Yes, I know. It's rotten, because when she has to start again, she's not very experienced in the game. She starts off with the phrase that she left off with.
I didn't realise you couldn't.
No, well, I'm afraid you can't, unless I
No, fair
have
enough,
to
no.
stick to the rules. So Derek gets a point. 56 seconds for magic. Derek starting now.
Merlin was a great practitioner of this art, and how I like going to the cinema or reading children's books and learning about this remarkable man who joined up with Arthur and his old round table and all those lovely nights.
Kenneth Williams' wife, you challenged.
Deviation, Merlin did not join up with Arthur at all.
What happened to him?
Because he didn't join up with him. I mean, he discovered him, and he didn't join up with him.
No, he wasn't in the sense, join up.
Conscription wasn't even in the
Precisely.
No, he just associated himself with them.
He discovered him in the box.
Yes, there we are.
Floating.
Kenneth, all right, you have the point and the subject. 39 seconds for magic, starting now.
Indeed, it was put to me quite recently that only this degree in any kind of belief holds, so to speak, the imperative. As long as people believe, shall we say, in the nature of a miracle.
Prunella Scales, you challenge. Why?
Well, deviation, he hasn't mentioned magic yet.
He hasn't mentioned magic. He's trying to describe it, but it sounded very devious, I must say.
I said it's this element in a belief which makes it imperative.
Oh, I see. Well,
which
all right.
anyone would
yes.
realize meant magic.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't. It is Kenneth's interpretation of magic which we will accept. Therefore, Kenneth, you keep the subject, and there are 21 seconds left, starting now.
A lot of people would say it's almost magical, the experience I have when I contemplate the infinite. Oh, I feel a sudden emotion, and it would seem that an act of magic is taking place. This occurs when I walk on in the theatre.
Well, that was Kenneth's strange and perhaps to some people devious idea of magic, but he's entitled to his own interpretation of the word, so he kept the subject, he gained an extra point for speaking when the whistle went,
And I won.
Not quite, Kenneth, no.
Well, who's won?
Well, I'll tell you who's won now, because I'm afraid we have no more time for this particular game. Prunella Scales, coming back to the game after a long absence, did jolly well. She got a lot of points, and she was just in fourth place, but you were all quite a way behind this week's winner, Derek Nimmer. That you have enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute, this radio game in which no holes are barred and no quarter given. And once again, we have our foremost seasoned players of the game, and they're going to try and talk for just a minute on some unlikely subjects that I will give them, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject in any way at all. If they can do this for a full minute, they will gain a point. And if one of the others thinks they're guilty of these crimes during that minute, they will challenge and gain a point, or not, as the case may be. I think if you're not sure of the scoring, we hope it'll become obvious as we play the game. And let us begin with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, Christmas party games. Can you talk on that seasonal subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Christmas party games, in common with other activities of similar ilk, are designed to cheat despair and obviate boredom, and I think the fact that they are proliferating so much is probably one of the most condemning indictments of our age. But Christmas party games are preferably with paper hats, plastic party novelties, and doves coming out of the chimney bearing a message of peace. Walnuts.
Derek Nimmo, you have challenged. Why?
On grounds of deviation, it's not games he's talking about, sort of Christmas demonstrations, and then doves out of the chimney and so on.
Well,
you ever
whether
tried to
it's-
get a couple of doves to come out the chimney?
Whether it's be a demonstration or not, I still think it could be interpreted as a game and certainly something to play at Christmas time. So as I disagree with the challenge, Kenneth Williams gains a point and he continues speaking on the subject for another 30 seconds, starting now.
Maudie Fittleworth, fun with a Frankfurter, always said that Christmas party games occupied most of her leisure time the rest of the year. In fact, she said that the other time was merely a dress rehearsal for the Christmas party games. Her favourite one was dressing up as the chimney sweep and embracing everyone at great propinquity, so that the black on her came off on them, much to their great embarrassment, of course. This isn't the kind of game I would recommend you're playing, and it's certainly not suitable.
Well, Kenneth has started off this show with a real bang. He kept going for a full 60 seconds with an...
Hesitation.
Yes. I said it. A full 60 seconds with only one interruption. So, Kenneth, as you were speaking when the whistle went, telling us the 60 seconds is up, you gain another point.
But I've leapt into the lead.
You have a commanding lead.
God.
You have 2 points and nobody else has any.
Oh, that's lovely. Let's hope it continues.
Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject is getting ahead. Will you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Of course, it's terribly difficult to get ahead if you haven't got one already. Because, of course, you don't have eyes to look for one with, or nose to smell one, or even a mouth to ask for one with. So let's suppose that one has one and wants to acquire another one. Well, of course, it's very much more difficult than it was, say, 200 years ago. Then one would have just gone down to Plymouth or Portsmouth and hired oneself a good wooden-walled ship and set sail westwards with a handful of golden sovereigns. When one reached the river Amazon, then one would sail up it for some time and then transfer to a small canoe. Having gone through Brazil, one would go into Peru, and there would one make contact with a local headsman. And exchanging a few beads, a copy of the New Testament and several prayer books, one would gain his services and proceed into the bush. And there one would find a likely body containing the aforesaid object on top of it. Then one would capture the same, and severing it from the neck, one would take it home, put it in the plastic bag.
Brilliant today. Yes, you have, because as you managed to speak for a full 60 seconds without being interrupted, which is a pretty good feat these days when the others are so clever, you gain a bonus point. So, Derek, you now have 2 points alongside Kenneth Williams. And we are yet to hear from our other two, but Clement Freud, it's your turn now. See if you can keep it up. Christmas pudding. Clement, can you talk on this subject for just a minute, starting now?
It's fairly important to keep up a Christmas pudding, which you do by putting it into a basin and employing a number of egg whites, which are a leavening medium for this particular purpose. Ideally, the subject about which I have to talk and about which I hope to talk as long and...
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged. Why?
Repetition of talk.
Yes, I'm afraid there was a repetition of talk. As I agree with your challenge, Derek, you gain another point, and there are 41 seconds for Christmas pudding starting now.
There's nothing I enjoy at Yuletide more than a flaming Christmas pudding.
Sheila Hancock, you've challenged. Why?
Swearing.
What are you saying? Deviation?
Yes, deviation, swearing.
All right. Well, Sheila, what I will do is, it's a clever challenge. I will give you a bonus point for cleverness, but I don't think within the context of the rules I can take the subject away. So Derek continues talking.
But you do know I'm here now, don't you?
Yes. You're not only there, but you've got a point as well. So 36 seconds left for Christmas pudding, Derek, starting now.
With the curtains drawn and the candles extinguished, I carry it into the room on a silver salver, ablaze with brandy. I then put in front of my friends and relations who are foregathered at Yuletide, and they dig into it with their forks and spoons, altogether comically, because it's a rather messy table. And then we find in it all sorts of 10 new pence and 5 new pennies, and all sorts of jolly things.
Kenneth White,
Two mentions of pence.
No.
10
new pence and 5 new pennies.
Oh, what a pity. I thought I'd stop.
Yes, it was very sharp, but I'm afraid it's not correct, Kenneth, so Derek has another point, and there are 17 seconds for Christmas pudding starting now.
These are always made for me by Mrs. Theobald, who lives at 14 Green Hill Road.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
It's illegal for private individuals to make currency.
Well, you always put currants in Christmas pudding.
A very clever challenge. You can't get out of it, Derek, so as I agree, Clement Freud has a point, and there are 14 seconds left for Christmas pudding starting now.
Ideally, Christmas pudding should be made some months before they're used, and the matured mixture is ideal on the day of action.
Sheila Hancock, why do you challenge?
Sorry, I was going to say the repetition of ideal, but once was ideally, wasn't it?
Yes, it was,
yes.
yes. One of those that Kenneth
He's
did.
gained a point now, you're saying that, you've given him a point.
But oh dear, have
Yes.
I? But I want to get the last few seconds like he always does.
Well, it was a very good try.
on you.
No, I'm
Almost
burning.
made, Sheila. 6 seconds left for Clement Freud, who has gained another point. Christmas pudding starting now.
Then 5 hours before the feast.
Derek, you challenge. Why?
Well, I want to get the last few seconds.
So why do you challenge?
Because I want to get the last few seconds.
That's not a legitimate challenge. All that
deviation.
happens... No, it's too late.
Deviation.
Anyway, I don't. He wasn't deviating. So all that happens is Clement gets another point, and he continues with his Christmas pudding for another 5 seconds starting now.
You lower the basin into boiling water.
Derek, why do you challenge?
Repetition of basin.
Yes, we've had basin once before.
Oh, you rock!
Got in, and you have 3.5 seconds left for Christmas pudding, Derek, starting
And say
now.
I get a sprig of holly with 3 red berries and 1 green leaf.
No, Clement Freud got in just before the whistle. What? Why do you challenge, Clement?
Repetition.
Of what?
3 red berries.
No, I think it was a descriptive phrase. It wasn't repeating anything. There were 3 red berries on his Christmas pudding, so I think I'm justified in leaving it with Derek Nimmo as a very clever challenge. Derek has another point, and there's half a second left for Christmas pudding, starting now.
Get out, you big soft off Christmas pudding!
So as Derek got in with that late challenge and then gained another point just before the whistle and then gained a bonus point because he was speaking when the whistle went, he's now taken a very definite lead at the end of that round. Sheila Hancock, will you begin the next round? First nights. Can you talk for 60 seconds on that subject starting now?
These are usually rather horrible. I'm not going to talk about first nights in marriage because I consider that's a subject that's been flogged to death. But first nights in the theatre are the most terrifying thing that can happen to actors. I have a process where I have to do a bit of relaxing before I go, have to take medicine to stop myself being sick because I am sick in the basin. Also, one spends quite a lot of time rushing along the corridor. The most extraordinary things happen to one's insides on first nights, as my fellow actors will tell. Then you have to go on the stage and look sparky and lovely.
Oh, yeah, Derek Nimmo, you've challenged. Why?
Nausea.
Not legitimate. It's not legitimate, is it?
It's all this awful biliousness all over the table.
I know. I'm afraid I can't give you any points for nausea.
No.
So that all that happens is Sheila gets another point and continues with her nausea subject for another 29 seconds, starting now.
The audience on these occasions is quite different from the audience on any other.
Roy. You challenge.
Repetition.
Well, it's a different audience, I just said. The audience on these occasions are quite different from the audiences on other occasions.
That's a very clever way of getting out of it, but you don't succeed, Sheila.
Well, you wait till the last few seconds, Clement Freud. I've got me finger on the what's-it.
And they've all got a what's-it to have their finger on here. Right, there are 25 seconds left for you, Clement, on first nights, starting now.
My first night happened on the 24th of April, on which morning I was born. It was a spring day, balmy, clear, and my mother tells me that the birds sang.
Sheila Hancock,
He's not talking about the first night, he's talking about the first day.
No, he did establish it was the first night after the first day in which he was born.
But he's talking about the day being balmy and springy.
He established the night and he went back to the day. So, Sheila, you have another point. And there are 13 seconds for first nights, Sheila, beginning now.
These audiences are made up of people...
Derek, no, you've challenged.
Repetition of these wretched audiences.
Yes, we've had audiences.
Oh, I didn't think... Oh, yes.
I know you hadn't mentioned it, but we've already had audiences.
Yes.
All right. So, Derek Nimmo has a point, and there are 11 seconds for first nights, Derek, starting now.
The first night of spring always gives me the greatest pleasure.
Kenneth White, would you?
Deviation, we're discussing first nights, not the first night of spring.
And I'm going to leave it to the judgment of our lovely, wise-looking audience. If you agree with Kenneth's challenge, will you please cheer? If you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? I think it's a draw. No points scored. We continue with Derek Nimmo on first nights. 7 seconds left, starting now.
When one hears the first lark sing after the nightingale has
Clement, why have you challenged?
Deviation, larks don't sing at night.
Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? Oh, that's brilliant.
No, they sing during the day, don't they?
That's right.
Oh, he's done it again.
The last few minutes, yes. Oh, it's close, isn't it, ticklish?
Has anybody in the audience ever heard a lark sing during the evening? Yes, they have.
At
right.
night.
At night, not the evening.
All right, Clement Freud has a point. There are 4 seconds left for first night's Clement, starting now. Derek Nimmo.
Hesitation.
Derek has another point, and there are 3 seconds left for first night's Derek, starting now.
The first night of Charlie was most...
Clement Freud, you've got it again.
We've already established that it's plural, first nights.
Yes.
we have.
No, we haven't, Ed.
Yes, but when you establish it is first nights, you can talk about first nights, and he was talking about one particular first night. It's a collective phrase, but he's talking about one individual one, which is part of this collective phrase. So Derek has another point, and there are 2 seconds for first nights, starting now.
So I went into my dressing room, and the first person that came out to me was Clement Freud.
After all, Charlie Girl can only have one first night, can't it? Derek, you've taken an even further lead at the end of that round. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? A lovely subject for you, ticklish situations. Will you speak on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
One of the most ticklish situations I ever had to face was the opening of a revue in the West End of London where the entire cast was being barracked by a particularly noisy and insulting member of the audience, and by the time I arrived, he cried out, "Effeminate fool!" And I walked down to the footlights and I said, "Be quiet, madam." He was forced to retreat, and thus I resolved a very ticklish situation. I have faced others. I was in Ceylon, serving with Her Majesty's forces. They were then His Majesty's, of course.
Challenge, why?
Well, when I buzzed, they were still hurting. Deviation.
Yes, he got out of it before I heard what the challenge was. I will give no points because Derek buzzed, and before I could ask him what the challenge was, Kenneth had qualified what he'd said. So, Kenneth, you continue, no points scored. 24 seconds left for ticklish situations, starting now.
In Ceylon, sitting there typing.
Derek, name your challenge.
Repetition
of Ceylon. Derek, you take over the subject of ticklish situations. 23 seconds, starting now.
I'm involved in a very ticklish situation at the moment, yes. It's terribly nice.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Deviation. He's supposed to discuss it.
He's supposed to discuss it and not demonstrate it. All right, Kenneth, I give you a point for cleverness. 19 seconds for ticklish situations, starting now.
They are generally brought about by eating biscuits in bed, and the crumbs are most irritating. People have landed up in some of our mental institutions because it's driven them raving mad. Oh, get the crumbs out of the sheet.
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Repetition of crumbs.
Yes, we've had crumbs more than once. They may have been full of them, but we've had too many, I think. So, Guns Clement's in again just before the whistle. 3 seconds left for you, Clement. Ticklish situations, starting now.
At the Theatre Royal in 1949, a performance...
As Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, he gains at another point, which puts him in a very strong second place, but Derek Nimmo is still leading. Derek, will you begin the next round? Pulling a cracker. What a delightful thing to do at this time of year.
Was it a definite article?
Pulling a cracker.
Indefinite.
Will you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I must say, there's nothing nicer at Christmas than pulling a cracker. I like to get hold of my cracker between my thumb and my index finger and give it a jolly good tug, and by doing that, I can always get hold of the motto, and perhaps a little banger if I'm very lucky, and perhaps a little paper hat. And if I get the little paper thing, I put it...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition.
Of what?
Well, everything seems to sound alike. But particularly paper.
Yes, indeed, there was a lot of repetition of paper. So, Clement, 43 seconds left for pulling a cracker, starting now.
Many people think that pulling a cracker makes you blind. I don't personally agree with this at all.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Deviation. Nobody believes any such thing.
I'm prepared to believe that you're absolutely right, Kelly. So I award you a point, and you take over the subject for 35 seconds, pulling a cracker, starting now.
It's given to you by the other person, and you are supposed to have it resulting...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Deviation needn't necessarily be given to you by the other person at all.
In order to pull it, it's got to
It doesn't matter. It needn't necessarily,
No,
but
indeed.
it can be, and therefore it is not deviation. Therefore, Kenneth has another point, and he continues for 30 seconds with pulling a cracker starting now.
The result is supposed to be an explosion and the revealing of the hidden novelty or motto, depending, of course, on the type of cracker you are pulling. But very often it goes into what is known as a wet squib. And they say, oh, mine didn't go bang. And I've got nothing inside. What you got? And then you run out with your little kettle or your little bit of old, you know, motto rubbish.
Well, as Kenneth was speaking when the whistle went, and he also gained other points on his cracker, he has crept up a little behind Clement Freud, who is creeping up a little on Derek Nimmo, who is still in the lead.
What about me? Nobody ever mentions me.
Well, you're doing extraordinarily well,
We
Sheila.
can't win.
You will indeed, I'm certain of that. Christmas decorations. Sheila, can you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
I find this a sad subject because it's something that always causes a row in our family. It starts by the fact that we can never find them. On Christmas Eve, there's an absolute panic while we search every wardrobe, and my mother says she definitely put them in the cupboard upstairs, and my husband denies it. Eventually, we find these rather dusty, nasty silver things, which we hang up with a bit of green stuff out of the garden, because I have forgotten to buy any other new ones. My little girl then drapes a few nasty coloured things that she's made at school, covered in glue, usually still rather sticky. I then take the Christmas cards that have been sent to me and stick them all over the wall. If you come into my house, you'll see the remains of it the entire year round. Then I put a great big bowl of dead flowers in the fireplace. As you can see, I'm not really frightfully good at Christmas decorations, but I do my best. You can take some twigs off a tree and a pot of silver paint and a brush and...
Derek, why have you challenged?
We had a brush before.
And you can't take a brush off a tree.
Brush. We also had tree.
I never heard no brush before.
You're the first...
I just grew. There wasn't any brush.
Stand up for yourself, girl. Go on.
He's trying to get in the...
You shut up this time, Derek Nimmo.
Yes.
No, the first thing you said that she repeated was brush. And I don't remember her saying
No,
brush before. She
never
did
said brush.
say twig before, but the first thing
Time
you...
will tell.
The first thing you challenged on was brush. So there's 1.5 seconds for Christmas decorations, Sheila, starting now.
And you...
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation?
I'm afraid there was a hesitation.
Oh!
Clement, there's 1 second left for Christmas decorations starting now.
Silver bells and...
Well... I hope everybody writes in and says what a rotten sport he is. Address the letters to me and I'll see that they get sent to the Director General.
Well, all I can say is that perhaps he is a rotten sport, but I do have to try and interpret the rules as fair as I can, and that was the longest hesitation you've done. It's a pity, because you did go for 59.5 seconds without stopping.
I don't care. I don't want to win. Because I'm a pacifist.
Well, don't worry, Sheila. I don't think you will. This is... But you have crept up quite considerably.
Oh, I'm good at creeping up.
And Kenneth and Clement are in second place, creeping up behind Derek Nimmo. There's a lot of creeping goes on in this show, as you can see. So let us continue with the show. Kenneth Williams, will you begin and talk about showing off? For just a minute, if you can, starting now.
This is something at which I am particularly adept. It
means to promenade and do in public what most people would do in the privacy of their bathroom. But I throw in caution to the wind and prepare...
Sheila, why would you judge?
Deviation. It's terribly kinky.
Going so slow, it was more than hesitation, I think, but once he threw his caution to the winds in the bathroom, I think I must agree with you, Sheila. There was a certain sense of deviation there, so 39... What's that?
It's doing in public what you do in your bathroom.
I make faces in the mirror.
Oh!
But you didn't establish it.
But close to the pure all things are, and she's a disgrace sitting there in third in a load of filth.
The way you were going on, it sounded rather devious what was coming out, so I have to try and interpret
You can't assume I'm going to be devious. You can only go on what I've done.
You went for 21 seconds and you hadn't established anything which was non-devious, so I'm with Sheila, who has a point, and there are 39 seconds left for showing off, Sheila, starting now.
This is an occupation that's peculiar to the male.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Oh, she shows off. Deviation. Not peculiar to the male.
I'm talking in the purely
She's a very big
biological
show-off.
sense.
All right. Sheila, as a female, is entitled to say that she thinks it's peculiar to the male.
Yes.
Therefore, I must be, within the context of the rules, stick with Sheila, who has another point, and there are 36 seconds left for showing off, Sheila, starting now.
If you read any book on ethnology, you will discover that I'm right about this. Birds show their tails and different displays in order to attract the female. This is called showing off. You see, it's a biological fact that men always are more resplendent than the women. That's why peacocks have great big tails.
Clement Freud, you challenged one.
Repetition of peacocks.
Did I say peacocks?
Yes,
again?
you did say peacocks
Oh.
before, yes. So, Clement, there are 17 seconds left for showing off, starting now.
This is something which people do ideally in Trafalgar Square, but also in other locations of...
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Because there's nothing ideal about showing off. So it's deviation.
Will you just say that again so I can think about it for a second?
So this is something done ideally, and it has nothing to do with ideal showing off. It's narcissistic and outrageous.
Well tried, Kenneth, well tried. But Clement Freud has a point. And there are 11 seconds left with Clement for showing off, starting now.
In fact, one might well say the larger the auditorium, the more efficacious is this means of projecting your own personality over that of those watching you. An aunt of mine...
That is the end, not only of the round, but also the end of the game, alas. And at the end of that game, Sheila, you came in a very commanding 4th place. Kenneth was in a very definite 3rd place. Derek Nimmo just failed to make it. He was very definitely 2nd place, only 1 point behind this week's winner, Clement Freud. That's all we have time for. We do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and we hope that you're all having a marvellous festive time. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.